Describe their expression, not their mood. Describe their expression, not their mood is a powerful communication technique that focuses on observable behaviors rather than assumptions about someone's internal state. When you notice someone seems upset, instead of saying, "You look angry," try saying, "I notice your jaw is clenched and your voice sounds tense." This approach removes the guesswork and potential for misinterpretation. The key difference lies in specificity and respect. Describing expressions shows you're paying attention without making judgments about what someone is feeling inside. You might be wrong about their mood, but you can accurately describe what you see. This technique prevents defensive reactions that often occur when people feel their emotions are being labeled incorrectly. This method works because it gives the other person control over naming their own emotions. They might respond with, "I'm not angry, I'm actually worried about my presentation tomorrow." Now you have accurate information instead of operating on false assumptions. It also demonstrates that you care enough to notice details about their state without being presumptuous. Using this approach builds trust because people feel seen and understood without feeling judged or analyzed. It opens the door for genuine conversation about what's really happening. The person feels safe to share because you've shown respect for their autonomy over their own emotional experience. This technique is particularly valuable in relationships, parenting, and workplace situations. It reduces conflict and increases understanding. Instead of triggering defensiveness, you create space for honest communication. People appreciate when others notice them without making them feel exposed or vulnerable. Say nothing, just nod. Say nothing, just nod means recognizing the incredible power of silent acknowledgement in human communication. Sometimes the most profound response you can give someone is simply nodding your head to show you're listening and understanding. This technique works because it creates space for the other person to fully express themselves without interruption or judgment. Nodding communicates several important messages simultaneously. It says, "I hear you, I'm present with you," and "please continue." This simple gesture can be more powerful than any words because it puts the focus entirely on the speaker. They feel valued and respected when given this kind of undivided attention. The magic happens in the silence between words. When you resist the urge to immediately respond, comment, or offer advice, you allow the other person to dig deeper into their thoughts and feelings. Often they'll reveal more important information or come to their own conclusions simply because you gave them the mental space to think. This technique is especially effective when someone is sharing something difficult or emotional. Your silence combined with attentive nodding creates a safe container for their expression. They don't have to compete with your words or worry about your reaction. They can simply be heard. Many people struggle with this because silence feels uncomfortable. We want to fill the space with our own thoughts or helpful suggestions. However, learning to be comfortable with these pauses makes you an exceptional listener and communicator. People will seek you out because they feel truly heard in your presence. The physical act of nodding also has psychological benefits for the listener. It keeps you engaged and prevents your mind from wandering to what you want to say next. Thank them for the thought, not the action. Thank them for the thought, not the action is a graceful way to handle situations where someone's intentions were good but their execution missed the mark. This approach acknowledges the positive intention behind someone's behavior while avoiding false gratitude for something that didn't actually help or that you didn't want. This technique recognizes that most people act with good intentions, even when the results aren't what we hoped for. By thanking someone for their thoughtfulness, you honor their caring impulse without having to pretend enthusiasm for the actual outcome. This preserves their dignity while keeping your own boundaries intact. For example, if someone brings you a gift you don't like, you can genuinely say, "Thank you so much for thinking of me," rather than pretending to love the gift itself. If a colleague tries to help with a project but creates more work, you might say, "I really appreciate that you wanted to support me on this." This approach prevents hurt feelings while maintaining honesty in relationships. It teaches people that their caring matters to you, even when their actions don't hit the target perfectly. This encourages them to continue being thoughtful while potentially learning better ways to show care in the future. The technique also helps you avoid building resentment. When you can acknowledge someone's good intentions, it's easier to forgive mistakes or misguided attempts at helpfulness. You're focusing on their heart rather than their execution, which keeps relationships positive and growth-oriented. This method works particularly well with family members, friends, and colleagues who sometimes try to help in ways that don't quite work for you. Ask, "Can you help me understand?" Ask, "Can you help me understand?" is a phrase that transforms potentially confrontational conversations into collaborative problem-solving sessions. This question works like magic because it positions you as genuinely curious rather than judgmental or attacking. It invites the other person to become your teacher rather than your opponent. This approach is incredibly disarming because it removes the defensive barriers that usually go up when people feel challenged. Instead of feeling attacked, the person feels invited to share their perspective. They become invested in helping you see their point of view, which creates cooperation instead of conflict. The question works because it acknowledges that there might be information or perspective you're missing. It shows humility and genuine interest in understanding rather than being right. This creates psychological safety for the other person to explain themselves without fear of immediate judgment or criticism. Using this phrase also buys you time to process information and respond thoughtfully rather than reactively. While they're explaining their reasoning, you can better understand their motivations and find common ground or areas of genuine disagreement worth discussing. This technique is particularly powerful in workplace situations, family disagreements, and any scenario where you're genuinely confused by someone's behavior or decisions. It often reveals important context you didn't have before, changing your entire understanding of the situation. The phrase assumes positive intent while seeking clarity. People respond well to this because they feel respected and valued as someone whose perspective matters. It turns potential arguments into learning opportunities for both parties. Say, "Tell me more," instead of arguing. Say, "Tell me more," instead of arguing means choosing curiosity over combat when faced with opinions or statements you disagree with. This simple phrase shifts the entire dynamic of a conversation from adversarial to exploratory. Instead of immediately launching into your counterargument, you invite the other person to elaborate on their thinking. This technique works because it addresses a fundamental human need to be heard and understood. When people feel their perspective is being genuinely considered, they often become more reasonable and open to hearing other viewpoints. They also tend to reveal more nuanced aspects of their thinking that might surprise you. The phrase buys you valuable time to understand the full scope of someone's position before responding. Often, what initially sounds unreasonable becomes more understandable when you hear the complete context. You might discover shared values or experiences that form the foundation for their beliefs, even if you reach different conclusions. Using "tell me more" also prevents you from making assumptions about what someone means or believes. People often express complex ideas in shorthand, and asking for elaboration reveals the deeper, more thoughtful reasoning behind their statements. This prevents you from arguing against strawman versions of their actual positions. This approach is especially powerful in politically charged or emotionally loaded conversations. It demonstrates respect for the person even when you disagree with their ideas. This respect often leads to more productive exchanges and sometimes genuine shifts in perspective on both sides. The technique also helps you become a better critical thinker by forcing you to fully understand opposing viewpoints before formulating your response. Share a secret first. Share a secret first means initiating vulnerability in relationships by revealing something personal about yourself before asking others to do the same. This principle recognizes that trust is built through reciprocal disclosure, and someone has to take the first step. When you share something meaningful about yourself, you create psychological safety for others to open up. This technique works because of the psychological principle of reciprocity. When you demonstrate trust in someone by sharing something personal, they often feel compelled to match that level of openness. You're essentially modeling the kind of conversation you want to have, showing that it's safe to be authentic and vulnerable. The key is choosing appropriate secrets that match the relationship level and context. In professional settings, this might mean sharing a professional challenge or learning experience. In personal relationships, it could be a fear, hope, or meaningful experience that shaped you. The secret should be genuine but not overwhelming for the situation. Sharing first also demonstrates emotional courage and leadership. You're willing to take the social risk of being seen more fully, which inspires others to do the same. This creates deeper, more meaningful connections than surface-level interactions allow. This approach is particularly effective when you want to strengthen relationships, build team cohesion, or create more authentic connections. It works in dating, friendships, family relationships, and professional mentoring situations. The shared vulnerability creates bonds that make relationships more resilient and satisfying. The technique requires good judgment about timing and appropriateness, but when used skillfully, it accelerates the development of trust and intimacy in relationships. Let them choose the timing. Let them choose the timing means recognizing that people are more receptive to important conversations when they feel ready and in control of when they happen. This approach respects the other person's emotional state and schedule, leading to more productive interactions. When people feel forced into difficult conversations, they often become defensive or shut down. This technique acknowledges that timing significantly impacts how well people can listen, process information, and respond thoughtfully. Someone who's stressed, tired, or dealing with other issues may not be able to give important matters the attention they deserve. By allowing them to choose when to engage, you increase the likelihood of a positive outcome. The approach works particularly well for sensitive topics like relationship issues, performance feedback, or family matters. Instead of ambushing someone with, "We need to talk," you might say, "I'd like to discuss something important with you. When would be a good time for you?" This gives them agency and preparation time. Letting others control timing also demonstrates respect for their autonomy and emotional intelligence. You're trusting them to know when they'll be most capable of engaging constructively. This respect often leads to more honest and productive conversations because they don't feel trapped or manipulated. This technique requires patience on your part, but it usually results in better outcomes than forced conversations. When people choose their timing, they're more likely to be present, engaged, and willing to work toward solutions rather than just defending themselves. The approach works especially well with teenagers, romantic partners, and anyone dealing with stress or major life changes. Use their name, rewire the brain. Use their name, rewire the brain refers to the powerful neurological and psychological impact of hearing one's own name spoken by others. This technique taps into fundamental brain science that shows people's names activate pleasure centers in their minds, creating positive associations with the speaker. When you use someone's name regularly in conversation, you literally rewire their brain to feel good about interacting with you. The science behind this is fascinating. Hearing our own name triggers the release of dopamine, the same neurotransmitter associated with pleasure and reward. This creates an unconscious positive association between you and that good feeling. People begin to associate you with pleasant experiences, even if they can't articulate why. Using names also captures and holds attention more effectively than generic address. When you say, "John, I think you make an excellent point," instead of, "I think you make an excellent point," John is more likely to be fully present and engaged with what comes next. His brain has been activated by hearing his name. This technique works in all types of relationships and settings. In business, using clients' names builds rapport and trust. In social situations, it makes people feel seen and remembered. In family relationships, it can reduce conflict and increase cooperation. Even in brief interactions like ordering coffee, using someone's name creates a moment of human connection. The key is using names naturally and appropriately, not excessively. Overuse can feel manipulative or strange. But when woven naturally into conversation, names become powerful tools for building positive relationships and influencing others in ethical ways. Dress one level higher. Dress one level higher means choosing clothing that's slightly more formal or polished than what's expected in your current environment. This principle recognizes that appearance significantly impacts how others perceive your competence, authority, and professionalism. When you dress just one notch above the norm, you signal respect for the situation while positioning yourself as someone who takes things seriously. This technique works because humans make rapid judgments about others based on visual cues. Within seconds of meeting someone, people form opinions about their intelligence, reliability, and status. By dressing slightly better than expected, you influence these snap judgments in your favor. You're perceived as more prepared, more serious, and more capable than your peers. The key word is one level, because overdressing can backfire. If everyone else wears jeans and you show up in a three-piece suit, you might seem out of touch or arrogant. But if others wear jeans and you wear nice pants with a collared shirt, you strike the perfect balance of respect and approachability. This strategy is particularly effective in professional settings, networking events, and important meetings. It helps you stand out in positive ways without seeming pretentious. People notice the extra effort and often interpret it as a sign that you value the opportunity and respect the other participants. The psychological effect works on you too. When you dress well, you tend to carry yourself with more confidence and behave more professionally. This creates a positive feedback loop where looking good leads to feeling good, which leads to performing better, which reinforces the positive impression others have formed. This approach requires understanding the culture and context of each situation while consistently choosing to elevate your presentation just slightly above the baseline. Lower your voice, raise their respect. Lower your voice, raise their respect is based on the counterintuitive principle that speaking more quietly often commands more attention and respect than speaking loudly. When you lower your voice, people instinctively lean in to listen, creating a sense of intimacy and importance around your words. This technique taps into psychological dynamics where scarcity and effort increase perceived value. This approach works because quiet confidence is often interpreted as genuine strength. People who need to shout to be heard are often perceived as insecure or lacking authority. In contrast, someone who speaks softly but clearly suggests they're so confident in their message that they don't need volume to make their point. Others must focus more intently to hear them, which automatically increases engagement. Lowering your voice also creates a calming effect in tense situations. When emotions are running high and voices are raised, the person who speaks quietly often becomes the voice of reason. Their measured tone can de-escalate conflicts and shift the energy of the entire conversation toward more productive dialogue. This technique is particularly powerful in leadership situations, negotiations, and intimate conversations. It forces others to really listen rather than just waiting for their turn to speak. The extra effort required to hear you makes your words seem more valuable and memorable. The physical act of speaking quietly also affects your own mental state. It forces you to slow down, choose your words more carefully, and project calm confidence. This self-regulation often leads to clearer thinking and better decision-making in challenging situations. The key is maintaining clarity while reducing volume, ensuring your quiet voice still carries authority and conviction rather than uncertainty or weakness. Nod while asking equals yes bias. Nod while asking equals yes bias refers to the powerful psychological technique of nodding your head while making requests or asking questions. This simple physical gesture subtly influences the other person to agree with you by triggering their natural tendency to mirror behavior and respond positively to confident, agreeable body language. This technique works through several psychological mechanisms. First, nodding is universally associated with agreement and positivity, so when people see you nodding, their brains automatically begin to associate your request with positive outcomes. Second, humans have a natural tendency to mirror the body language of others, so your nodding often triggers unconscious nodding in return, which psychologically predisposes them toward agreement. The nodding also projects confidence in your request, suggesting that you expect a positive response. This confidence is contagious and makes others more likely to view your request favorably. When you nod while speaking, you're essentially saying, "This is reasonable," and you'll want to say yes, without using those words. This technique is particularly effective in sales situations, when asking for favors, or when seeking agreement on proposals or ideas. The nodding should be subtle and natural, not exaggerated or obvious, as that can come across as manipulative. The goal is to create a positive, agreeable atmosphere that makes saying yes feel natural and comfortable. The technique works because it aligns your verbal and nonverbal communication in a way that feels authentic and persuasive. People are more likely to trust and agree with someone whose body language matches their words and conveys confidence and positivity. It's important to use this ethically, for requests that genuinely benefit both parties rather than as a manipulation tool for selfish purposes. Ask for advice, gain influence. Ask for advice, gain influence is a counterintuitive principle that suggests you can increase your influence over others by positioning yourself as someone seeking their wisdom rather than someone trying to convince them of something. When you ask people for advice, you tap into their desire to be helpful, knowledgeable, and important, which creates positive feelings toward you and investment in your success. This technique works because of the psychological principle called the Benjamin Franklin effect. When people give you advice, they become emotionally invested in seeing you succeed with their recommendations. They've put mental energy into helping you, which creates a sense of ownership over your outcomes. This investment makes them more likely to support you in other ways and view you favorably. Asking for advice also flatters people's expertise and makes them feel valued and respected. Everyone wants to feel like they have valuable knowledge to share, and by seeking their input, you're acknowledging their competence and experience. This creates goodwill and strengthens your relationship with them. The approach is particularly effective because it's collaborative rather than confrontational. Instead of trying to convince someone that your way is right, you're inviting them to help you find the best path forward. This removes defensive barriers and makes people more open to considering your perspective and goals. This technique works well in professional settings, mentoring relationships, and even personal situations where you need buy-in from others. The key is asking for advice genuinely, not as a manipulation tactic, and being prepared to actually consider and potentially implement their suggestions. People also tend to give better, more thoughtful responses when asked for advice rather than being told what to do. The mirror technique. The mirror technique means subtly mimicking the body language, tone of voice, and communication style of the person you're interacting with. This psychological approach taps into humans' natural tendency to like people who are similar to them, creating rapport and trust through unconscious behavioral matching. When done skillfully, mirroring makes others feel more comfortable and connected to you. This technique works because of mirror neurons in our brains that fire both when we perform an action and when we observe others performing the same action. When someone mirrors our behavior, it creates a sense of harmony and understanding that we experience as likability and trust. People unconsciously interpret this similarity as evidence that you get them or are on the same wavelength. The key is subtlety and authenticity. If someone speaks slowly and thoughtfully, you might slow down your speech slightly. If they lean forward while talking, you might lean forward too after a brief delay. If they use certain phrases or communication styles, you can incorporate similar language naturally into your responses. The mirroring should never be obvious or feel like mimicry. This approach is particularly effective in sales, negotiations, interviews, and relationship building. It helps create psychological safety and connection that makes people more open to your ideas and more likely to work with you. The technique also works in reverse, where you can influence others' energy by modeling the behavior you want to see from them. The mirror technique requires careful observation and emotional intelligence to implement effectively. You need to read the other person's communication style and energy level, then adjust your own behavior to create harmony without losing your authenticity or crossing into manipulation territory. Yes ladder. Yes ladder is a persuasion technique that involves starting conversations with small questions or statements that are easy to agree with, then gradually building toward your larger request or more controversial point. This approach works by creating momentum of agreement that makes people more likely to say yes to bigger requests after they've already said yes to smaller ones. This technique leverages the psychological principle of consistency. Once people have agreed to something, they feel internal pressure to remain consistent with that position. Each yes makes the next yes more likely because people want their behavior and responses to align with their previous commitments. This creates a psychological pathway that leads naturally toward your ultimate goal. The ladder works best when each rung represents a logical progression toward your main point. You might start with universally acceptable statements like, "We all want our children to be safe," before moving toward more specific proposals about school policies. Each agreement builds psychological momentum and investment in the conversation's direction. This approach is particularly effective in sales, fundraising, political discussions, and any situation where you need to move someone from skepticism to agreement. The key is ensuring each step feels reasonable and connects logically to the next. If the jumps between rungs are too large, people will notice the manipulation and resist. The yes ladder also works because it gives people time to mentally adjust to new ideas gradually rather than being confronted with a big request all at once. This incremental approach reduces resistance and allows people to convince themselves rather than feeling pressured by you. Ethical use requires ensuring that your ultimate request genuinely benefits the other person and that you're not manipulating them into something harmful or unwanted. Say because. Say because means always providing a reason when making requests or statements, even if the reason seems obvious or simple. This technique dramatically increases compliance and acceptance because humans have a deep psychological need to understand the why behind actions and requests. When you provide reasoning, people feel more comfortable agreeing because they understand the logic. This principle was famously demonstrated in psychology experiments where people were much more likely to let someone cut in line when given any reason, even arbitrary ones like, because I need to make copies. The word, because, itself seems to trigger automatic compliance by satisfying our need for causation and explanation. The technique works because providing reasons makes your requests feel more legitimate and reasonable. People are naturally skeptical of demands that seem arbitrary or self-serving. When you explain your reasoning, you transform a command into a collaborative understanding. The other person can evaluate your logic and choose to agree rather than feeling manipulated or controlled. Using because also demonstrates respect for the other person's intelligence and autonomy. You're treating them as someone capable of understanding and evaluating your reasoning rather than someone who should simply comply without question. This respect often leads to more willing cooperation and better long-term relationships. This approach is particularly effective in workplace situations, parenting, and any context where you need others to follow instructions or change their behavior. The reasons don't always have to be profound or complex. Even simple explanations like, because it will save us time or, because it's safer this way, significantly increase cooperation. The key is making the reasoning genuine and relevant to the situation rather than creating fake or manipulative justifications. Bring something in your hand. Bring something in your hand refers to the strategic practice of carrying an object when you want to appear busy, important, or purposeful. This simple technique leverages visual cues that automatically communicate to others that you're engaged in meaningful activity and have somewhere important to be. People carrying items are perceived as more competent and focused than those with empty hands. This approach works because humans make rapid judgments based on visual information, and someone carrying something appears to have direction and purpose. Whether it's a folder, notebook, coffee cup, or even just keys, the object serves as a prop that suggests you're in the middle of important tasks. This perception often leads to more respectful treatment and fewer interruptions. The technique is particularly useful in office environments where you might want to move through spaces without being stopped for casual conversation or assigned additional tasks. Carrying papers or a laptop suggests you're focused on priority work and heading to an important meeting or task. This visual cue often makes people think twice before interrupting you. The psychological effect also works on you. When you carry something purposeful, you tend to walk with more intention and confidence. This change in your own behavior reinforces the perception others have of you as someone who's busy and focused. The prop becomes a tool for both external perception management and internal confidence building. This technique works in various settings beyond the workplace. Carrying a water bottle while walking suggests you're exercising intentionally rather than just wandering. Holding a book in public spaces communicates intelligence and purposefulness. The key is choosing objects that match the image you want to project in each specific context. Confidence loop. Confidence loop means understanding that confidence creates a self-reinforcing cycle where confident behavior leads to positive outcomes, which builds more confidence, which leads to even better results. This principle recognizes that confidence isn't just a feeling but a skill that can be developed through deliberate practice and awareness of how it compounds over time. The loop works because confident behavior influences how others respond to you. When you speak clearly, make eye contact, and carry yourself with purpose, people treat you with more respect and give you more opportunities. These positive responses validate your confident approach and encourage you to maintain or increase that confident behavior in future situations. This technique is powerful because it addresses both internal and external factors. Externally, confident behavior signals competence and reliability to others, making them more likely to trust you with important tasks or include you in significant conversations. Internally, acting confidently actually changes your brain chemistry, increasing testosterone and decreasing cortisol, which makes you feel more genuinely confident. The key insight is that you don't need to wait until you feel confident to act confidently. You can start the loop at any point by choosing confident behaviors even when you don't feel confident inside. Standing straighter, speaking clearly, making decisions promptly, and maintaining eye contact all trigger the positive responses that build real confidence over time. This approach works particularly well in professional settings, social situations, and any area where you want to build credibility and influence. The challenge is being patient with the process and continuing confident behaviors even when you don't immediately see results. The compound effect takes time but becomes incredibly powerful as the loop strengthens. The power of pause. The power of pause means strategically using silence and delayed responses to increase your influence, appear more thoughtful, and create space for better decision-making. This technique recognizes that in our fast-paced world, the person who can be comfortable with silence often controls the conversation and commands more respect than those who rush to fill every quiet moment. This approach works because pauses create psychological pressure that most people want to relieve by talking. When you pause after asking a question, the other person feels compelled to provide a more complete answer. When you pause before responding, it signals that you're giving their words serious consideration, which makes them feel valued and heard. Pauses also give your brain time to process information and formulate better responses. Instead of reacting immediately with whatever comes to mind first, you can choose your words more carefully and respond more strategically. This leads to higher quality communication and fewer regrets about things said in the heat of the moment. The technique is particularly powerful in negotiations, difficult conversations, and leadership situations. A well-timed pause can de-escalate tension, encourage others to reveal more information, or simply make your next words carry more weight. People interpret pauses as signs of wisdom and careful consideration. This skill requires practice because silence can feel uncomfortable at first. Most people have been conditioned to fill quiet spaces immediately. Learning to be comfortable with strategic pauses takes time but dramatically improves your communication effectiveness. The pause becomes a tool for creating emphasis, showing respect, and maintaining control of conversations. The key is using pauses intentionally rather than letting them happen accidentally due to uncertainty or confusion. Comment on the atmosphere, not them. Comment on the atmosphere, not them means addressing the energy or mood in a room rather than making direct observations about individuals when you want to acknowledge tension or shift the dynamic. This technique allows you to address elephant-in-the-room situations without putting anyone on the spot or creating defensiveness that comes from direct personal observations. This approach works because it gives everyone in the situation a face-saving way to acknowledge what's happening without feeling targeted or blamed. When you say, "There seems to be some tension in the room," instead of, "You seem upset," you allow people to own their emotions and responses without feeling analyzed or called out. This reduces defensiveness and opens space for resolution. Commenting on atmosphere also positions you as an objective observer rather than someone taking sides or making judgments about individuals. This neutral stance often makes you a trusted voice that others will listen to when you suggest solutions or ask clarifying questions about what's creating the challenging dynamics. The technique is particularly effective in meetings, family gatherings, and group situations where emotions are running high but nobody wants to address the obvious tension directly. It acknowledges reality while giving everyone permission to participate in improving the situation rather than defending their individual positions. This method also works because it focuses on something changeable. While people can't instantly change their personalities or deeply held beliefs, they can choose to shift the energy they bring to a situation. By focusing on atmosphere, you're implicitly inviting collaboration in creating a better environment for everyone. The key is making these observations in a curious, non-judgmental way that invites problem-solving rather than blame. Say, "That's exactly what I would have said." Say, "That's exactly what I would have said," is a powerful validation technique that makes people feel understood and appreciated while positioning you as someone who thinks along similar lines. This phrase works by creating instant connection and showing that you value the other person's perspective enough to claim it as your own. It's one of the highest forms of intellectual compliment you can give someone. This technique works because it addresses fundamental human needs for validation and belonging. When you tell someone they've expressed exactly what you were thinking, you're essentially saying their mind works like yours, which creates a sense of kinship and mutual respect. This validation often makes people more open to your other ideas and more likely to seek your opinion in the future. The phrase also demonstrates that you're a good listener who genuinely processes what others are saying rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. This builds trust and encourages more open communication. People feel safe sharing ideas with someone who clearly values and understands their thinking process. This approach is particularly effective in meetings, brainstorming sessions, and collaborative situations where you want to build on someone's contribution while also strengthening your relationship with them. It's also useful when you want to support someone's idea without seeming like you're just agreeing to be polite. The key is using this phrase genuinely when you truly do resonate with what someone has said. If overused or used insincerely, it can seem manipulative or fake. But when used authentically, it becomes a powerful tool for building rapport and encouraging continued sharing of ideas and perspectives. This technique works across professional and personal relationships, making people feel valued and intellectually respected. Use scarcity. Only a few people know this. Use scarcity. Only a few people know this leverages the psychological principle that people value information, opportunities, and experiences more highly when they believe they're rare or exclusive. This technique taps into our natural desire to have access to special knowledge or to be part of a select group that possesses valuable insights others don't have. This approach works because scarcity creates urgency and importance in people's minds. When you frame information as exclusive or limited, it automatically becomes more valuable to the listener. They pay closer attention because they believe they're receiving something special that most people don't have access to. This increased attention makes your message more memorable and impactful. The technique also makes people feel special and chosen. When you suggest that only a few people know something and you're sharing it with them, you're essentially saying they're part of an exclusive group worthy of this insider knowledge. This creates a sense of privilege and connection that builds loyalty and trust. This approach is particularly effective in sales, marketing, teaching, and mentoring situations. It can make routine information seem more valuable and increase people's investment in learning and applying what you're sharing. The exclusivity factor also makes people more likely to share the information with others, often maintaining the sense of scarcity in how they present it. The key is using this technique ethically and truthfully. The information should genuinely be valuable and relatively uncommon knowledge. Using false scarcity or overstating exclusivity can damage trust and credibility. When used appropriately, it becomes a powerful tool for increasing engagement and perceived value. The technique works because it transforms the act of sharing information into the act of granting access to something special. Speak to pain, not logic. Speak to pain, not logic means recognizing that people are motivated more by emotional discomfort and the desire to solve problems than by logical arguments alone. This principle acknowledges that while logic helps people justify their decisions, emotional pain is what actually drives them to take action. When you can identify and address someone's underlying frustrations or fears, you connect with their motivation in a much more powerful way. This technique works because pain creates urgency that logic cannot match. Someone might logically understand that they need to exercise more, but they won't actually start until the pain of feeling unhealthy outweighs their resistance to change. When you can articulate someone's pain points clearly, they feel understood and are more likely to engage with your solutions. Speaking to pain also demonstrates empathy and understanding that builds trust and connection. When you can identify and acknowledge what's really bothering someone, they know you're paying attention to their actual experience rather than just pushing your own agenda. This creates psychological safety and openness to your ideas. This approach is particularly effective in sales, coaching, therapy, and leadership situations. Instead of leading with features and benefits, you lead with problems and frustrations. Instead of explaining why something is logically the right choice, you help people recognize how their current situation is causing them discomfort or preventing them from getting what they want. The key is identifying genuine pain points rather than creating artificial problems. People can sense when someone is manufacturing urgency versus when they truly understand real struggles. The technique works best when you can help people clarify problems they already feel but might not have articulated clearly. Confess first, then ask, disarming honesty. Confess first, Then ask means leading with vulnerability and honesty about your own mistakes, limitations, or motivations before making requests or trying to influence others. This technique disarms natural defensiveness by showing that you're willing to be vulnerable and authentic rather than trying to appear perfect or manipulative. When people see your humanity first, they're more likely to respond positively to what comes next. This approach works because it violates people's expectations in the best possible way. Most people expect others to present their best face when asking for something. When you instead lead with honest confession about your own flaws or mistakes, it creates surprise and appreciation for your authenticity. This unexpected honesty builds trust and makes people more receptive to your requests. The technique also demonstrates self-awareness and humility that most people find attractive and trustworthy. When you can acknowledge your own limitations or past mistakes, it shows emotional intelligence and makes you seem more relatable and human. This connection makes people want to help you rather than feeling like they're being manipulated or sold to. This approach is particularly effective when you need to rebuild trust after making mistakes, when asking for help or favors, or when trying to influence people who might be skeptical of your motives. The confession should be genuine and relevant to the situation, not just a manipulation tactic. The key is choosing appropriate confessions that show vulnerability without undermining your competence or credibility. You want to appear human and honest while still being someone worth listening to and helping. The confession should make your subsequent request feel more reasonable and justified rather than highlighting why people shouldn't help you. Let them correct you, then they trust you. Let them correct you, then they trust you means strategically making small, correctable errors that allow others to feel knowledgeable and helpful by setting you straight. This technique builds trust and rapport because people feel good when they can teach or correct someone, and they develop positive feelings toward people who make them feel smart and useful. When someone corrects you and you respond gracefully, they feel invested in your success. This approach works because it satisfies people's desire to be helpful and demonstrate their knowledge. When you make a minor mistake that someone can easily correct, you give them an opportunity to feel valuable and competent. This positive feeling becomes associated with you, making them more likely to view you favorably and want to continue helping you. The technique also shows humility and teachability that most people find attractive. When you can accept correction gracefully and thank people for their input, you demonstrate that you're someone worth investing time and energy in. People prefer to work with and support those who can learn and grow rather than those who act like they already know everything. This approach is particularly effective in learning situations, networking events, and when building relationships with experts or mentors. The errors should be small and easily correctable, not major mistakes that undermine your credibility. You want to appear eager to learn rather than incompetent. The key is choosing mistakes carefully and responding to corrections with genuine appreciation rather than defensiveness. The goal is to create opportunities for positive interaction and investment, not to appear foolish or unprepared. When done skillfully, this technique turns potential teachers into advocates and supporters. Ask, what would you do? Ask, what would you do, is a powerful technique that transforms conversations from advice-giving sessions into collaborative problem-solving experiences. This question invites others to put themselves in your position and think through solutions, which creates deeper engagement and investment in your situation than simply telling them your problems would achieve. This approach works because it activates people's natural desire to solve puzzles and demonstrate their wisdom. When you ask what they would do, you're essentially asking them to become the hero of your story, which is psychologically appealing and engaging. They feel valued for their judgment and experience, which creates positive feelings toward you and stronger motivation to help. The question also generates more thoughtful and practical advice than general requests for help. When people have to imagine themselves in your exact situation, they consider details and constraints they might otherwise overlook. This leads to more realistic and actionable suggestions that are actually useful rather than generic platitudes. This technique is particularly effective because it creates emotional investment in your success. Once someone has mentally worked through your challenge and suggested a solution, they become psychologically invested in seeing that solution work. They've put mental energy into your problem, which makes them more likely to follow up and continue supporting you. The approach works well in professional mentoring, personal relationships, and any situation where you need genuine insight rather than just sympathy. It transforms you from someone seeking help into someone seeking wisdom, which is a much more empowering and engaging dynamic for both parties. The key is asking this question about real dilemmas where you genuinely want input, not as a manipulation tactic to get attention or sympathy. Smile first, feel later. Smile first, feel later is based on the scientific principle that facial expressions can actually influence emotions rather than just reflecting them. This technique recognizes that your brain takes cues from your facial muscles, so when you smile deliberately, even when you don't feel happy, you can actually trigger positive emotions and improve your mood through the physical act of smiling. This approach works because of the facial feedback hypothesis, which suggests that facial expression sends signals to the brain that influence emotional states. When you smile, your brain releases endorphins and serotonin, which are natural mood elevators. This creates a positive feedback loop where the act of smiling leads to feeling better, which makes genuine smiling easier. The technique also influences how others respond to you. When you smile, people unconsciously mirror that expression and feel more positive themselves. This creates better interactions and responses, which then gives you genuine reasons to feel good and continue smiling. The fake smile gradually becomes real through the positive responses it generates. This approach is particularly useful in challenging situations, difficult conversations, or when you're feeling stressed or anxious. Starting with a smile can shift the entire energy of an interaction and help you access more positive emotions and clearer thinking. It's also valuable in professional settings where you need to project confidence and approachability even when you're not feeling your best. The key is starting with small, genuine feeling smiles rather than forcing big, obviously fake expressions. Even a slight upturn of the corners of your mouth can begin the positive feedback process. The goal is to use your body to influence your mind rather than waiting for your mind to change on its own. Give the gift first, reciprocity effect. Give the gift first means leveraging the powerful psychological principle of reciprocity by offering value, help, or kindness before asking for anything in return. This technique recognizes that humans have a deep-seated need to return favors and maintain balance in their relationships, making them much more likely to help you after you've helped them first. This approach works because reciprocity is one of the strongest social forces governing human behavior. When someone does something nice for you, you feel psychological pressure to return the favor. This isn't manipulation but rather a fundamental aspect of how humans build trust and maintain social bonds. The person who gives first often receives much more in return than they initially offered. The gift doesn't have to be expensive or elaborate. It could be valuable information, a helpful introduction, assistance with a project, or even just genuine compliments or recognition. The key is offering something meaningful to the other person without immediately asking for anything in exchange. This creates goodwill and positive feelings that make future requests more likely to be granted. This technique is particularly effective in business relationships, networking situations, and building new friendships. It establishes you as someone who adds value to others' lives rather than someone who only takes. This reputation makes people want to work with you and support your goals because they know you'll reciprocate. The approach also works because it demonstrates abundance thinking rather than scarcity thinking. When you give first, you show confidence that good things will come back to you, which is attractive to others and often becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. The key is giving genuinely without keeping score or making the reciprocity expectation obvious or uncomfortable. Plant ideas as questions. Plant ideas as questions means introducing concepts or suggestions in question form rather than as direct statements or commands. This technique allows people to discover ideas for themselves, which makes them much more likely to accept and act on those ideas than if you had simply told them what to think or do. Questions create space for people to reach their own conclusions. This approach works because people resist being told what to think but enjoy figuring things out for themselves. When you pose a question that leads someone toward a particular insight, they feel ownership of that idea because they discovered it through their own thinking process. This ownership makes them much more committed to acting on the insight than they would be if you had simply given them advice. Questions also create curiosity and engagement that statements cannot match. When you ask, "What would happen if we tried approaching this differently?" you invite exploration and creativity. When you simply say, "We should try a different approach," you create potential resistance and reduce engagement with the problem-solving process. This technique is particularly effective in leadership, parenting, coaching, and sales situations. Instead of telling people what they should do, you guide them toward discovering those solutions themselves. This builds their confidence and problem-solving abilities while also ensuring better buy-in for the solutions they generate. The key is crafting questions that genuinely open up thinking rather than leading people toward predetermined answers in manipulative ways. The best questions create space for multiple possible insights and allow people to surprise you with creative solutions you hadn't considered. This approach also works because it positions you as a facilitator of thinking rather than someone pushing an agenda. Show microvulnerability, then strength. Show microvulnerability, then strength means strategically revealing small, relatable imperfections or challenges before demonstrating your competence and capabilities. This technique creates connection through shared humanity while still establishing your credibility and strength. The vulnerability makes you approachable and trustworthy, while the subsequent display of strength makes you someone worth following or working with. This approach works because pure strength without vulnerability can seem intimidating or inauthentic, while pure vulnerability without strength can seem weak or unreliable. The combination creates the perfect balance of approachability and competence that people find most attractive in leaders, partners, and friends. The microvulnerability should be small and relatable rather than overwhelming or inappropriate for the situation. It might be admitting you're nervous about a presentation before delivering it brilliantly, or acknowledging that you struggled with a skill before demonstrating your current mastery of it. The key is showing that you're human without undermining confidence in your abilities. This technique is particularly effective in leadership situations, first impressions, and building trust in professional or personal relationships. It helps people see you as someone who has grown and overcome challenges rather than someone who has never faced difficulties. This makes your strength seem more real and achievable. The approach also works because it creates psychological safety for others to be vulnerable with you. When you show that imperfection is acceptable, others feel more comfortable sharing their own challenges and uncertainties. This creates deeper, more authentic relationships built on mutual understanding rather than perfect facades. The timing and context are crucial for this technique to work effectively without backfiring. Don't interrupt, they'll think you're brilliant. Don't interrupt, they'll think you're brilliant recognizes that exceptional listening skills are so rare that people who master them are perceived as unusually intelligent and insightful. This technique acknowledges that in our interrupt-driven culture, someone who can truly listen without jumping in with their own thoughts creates such a positive experience that others attribute genius-level qualities to them. This approach works because most people are so accustomed to being interrupted or having others wait impatiently for their turn to speak that encountering genuine listening feels remarkable. When you resist the urge to interrupt, even when you have something brilliant to add, the speaker feels truly heard and valued. This positive feeling becomes associated with you as a person. Not interrupting also allows you to gather much more information and understand the complete picture before responding. While others are formulating their responses and missing important details, you're absorbing everything being said. This comprehensive understanding allows you to make more thoughtful and relevant contributions when you do speak. The technique is particularly powerful because it demonstrates confidence and emotional intelligence. Someone who doesn't need to immediately prove their worth by jumping into conversations appears secure and thoughtful. This perceived confidence makes others more likely to value your eventual contributions and seek your input in future discussions. This approach also creates space for others to fully develop their thoughts and often leads them to deeper insights they wouldn't have reached if interrupted. When you allow people to complete their thinking process, they often arrive at more nuanced and valuable conclusions, making the entire conversation more productive. The key is genuinely focusing on understanding rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. Leave before it peaks, peak-end rule. Leave before it peaks means strategically ending interactions, events, or experiences while they're still going well rather than waiting until energy naturally declines. This technique leverages the psychological principle that people remember experiences based primarily on their peak moment and how they ended, rather than the overall duration or average quality of the entire experience. This approach works because our brains are wired to give disproportionate weight to endings when forming memories and judgments about experiences. If you leave while people are still engaged and enjoying themselves, they remember the interaction as entirely positive. If you stay until natural fatigue or declining interest sets in, that lower energy ending colors their memory of the entire encounter. The technique is particularly effective in social situations, meetings, presentations, and even romantic relationships. Ending on a high note leaves people wanting more rather than feeling drained or oversaturated. This creates anticipation for future interactions and builds your reputation as someone who knows how to create positive experiences. This approach also demonstrates social awareness and emotional intelligence that people find attractive. Someone who can read the room and know when to gracefully exit appears sophisticated and considerate. This skill makes others more likely to invite you to future events and seek out your company. The key is developing the ability to recognize peak moments and having the discipline to act on that recognition rather than trying to extend good experiences beyond their natural peak. This requires overcoming the natural tendency to hold on to positive moments and instead trust that leaving people wanting more creates stronger long-term impressions. This technique works in professional and personal contexts where you want to build lasting positive associations. The 5-to-1 ratio rule. The 5-to-1 ratio rule means maintaining 5 positive interactions or comments for every negative or critical one in order to build and maintain healthy, strong relationships. This principle recognizes that negative experiences have much more psychological impact than positive ones, so it takes multiple positive interactions to balance out each negative one and keep relationships thriving. This approach works because of negativity bias, a fundamental aspect of human psychology where negative events and feedback affect us much more strongly than positive ones. Research shows that it takes approximately 5 positive experiences to counteract the impact of one negative experience. Without maintaining this ratio, relationships gradually deteriorate even when the criticism is constructive and necessary. The technique is particularly crucial in management, parenting, marriage, and any ongoing relationship where you need to give feedback or correction. If you only focus on problems and mistakes without regularly acknowledging what's working well, people become demoralized and defensive. The positive interactions create a foundation of goodwill that makes criticism more acceptable and effective. This approach also works because it changes your own perspective and behavior. When you actively look for things to appreciate and acknowledge, you become more aware of what people are doing right rather than just focusing on problems. This shift in attention improves your relationships and makes you more pleasant to be around. The positive interactions should be genuine and specific rather than generic praise. They can include appreciation for effort, acknowledgement of good results, recognition of improvement, or simply expressions of gratitude for someone's presence or contributions. The key is making positivity a deliberate practice rather than leaving it to chance. 90-minute sleep cycle unlock. 90-minute sleep cycle unlock means timing your sleep around natural sleep cycles of approximately 90 minutes each, allowing you to wake up during lighter sleep phases rather than deep sleep stages. This technique leverages your body's natural rhythm to help you wake up feeling refreshed and alert instead of groggy and disoriented, even with less total sleep time. This approach works because sleep occurs in predictable cycles that move from light sleep through deep sleep and REM sleep before returning to light sleep. When you wake up during deep sleep phases, you feel foggy and tired regardless of how long you slept. When you wake up during light sleep phases, you feel naturally alert and ready to start your day. The technique involves calculating backward from your desired wake time in 90-minute intervals. If you need to wake up at 7 a.m., you would aim to fall asleep at either 11:30 p.m. for 6 cycles, 1 a.m. for 5 cycles, or 2:30 a.m. for 4 cycles. This ensures you complete full cycles rather than being jarred awake mid-cycle. This method is particularly valuable for people with irregular schedules, students pulling all-nighters, or anyone who wants to optimize their energy levels regardless of total sleep time. Many people find they feel more rested getting 4.5 hours of cycle-aligned sleep than 6 hours of randomly timed sleep. The approach also helps you understand your personal sleep patterns better. Some people naturally complete cycles slightly faster or slower than 90 minutes, so tracking how you feel with different timing helps you fine-tune your personal optimal schedule. This knowledge becomes invaluable for managing energy and productivity. The key is consistency and giving yourself time to fall asleep, typically adding 15 to 20 minutes to account for the transition into sleep. The first word wins, primacy effect. The first word wins means understanding that the initial information people receive about a topic, person, or situation creates a lasting impression that influences all subsequent judgments. This principle recognizes that first impressions and opening statements carry disproportionate weight in how people process and remember information, making your opening words crucial for success in any interaction. This approach works because of how the brain processes and stores information. The first pieces of data create a framework that all later information gets filtered through. People unconsciously interpret new information in ways that confirm their initial impressions rather than challenging them. This cognitive bias makes opening moments incredibly powerful in shaping outcomes. The technique is particularly important in presentations, meetings, first dates, job interviews, and any situation where you want to influence someone's perception. Your opening words set the tone and create expectations that color everything that follows. Starting strong with confidence, clarity, or compelling information establishes a positive trajectory that's difficult to derail. This principle also applies to written communication like emails, proposals, and reports. The first paragraph or even the first sentence determines whether people continue reading with interest or approach the rest with skepticism or boredom. A strong opening creates momentum that carries through the entire message. The approach requires careful preparation and intentional crafting of opening statements. You need to consider what impression you want to create and choose words that immediately establish that perception. This might mean leading with your strongest point, most impressive credential, or most engaging story rather than building up to it gradually. Understanding this effect also helps you recognize when others are using it and evaluate information more objectively rather than being overly influenced by strong openings. The last word lingers, recency bias. The last word lingers means recognizing that people remember and are most influenced by the final information they receive in any interaction or presentation. This principle acknowledges that while first impressions matter enormously, the last impression often determines how people feel when they walk away and what they remember most clearly later. This approach works because of how memory consolidation functions in the brain. The most recent information is still active in working memory when people form their final judgments about an experience. This recency effect means that ending strong can overcome earlier weaknesses, while ending poorly can undermine everything that came before. The technique is crucial for presentations, negotiations, difficult conversations, and any situation where you want people to leave with specific feelings or information. Your closing words should reinforce your main message and create the emotional state you want people to carry forward. This might mean ending with your strongest argument, most compelling story, or clearest call to action. This principle also applies to resolving conflicts or repairing relationships. Even if most of a conversation was challenging, ending with appreciation, hope, or commitment to improvement can transform how the entire interaction is remembered and what momentum it creates going forward. The approach requires strategic planning of your conclusion rather than letting conversations trail off naturally. You need to craft endings that feel natural but deliberately reinforce your desired outcome. This might mean summarizing key points, painting a vision of positive outcomes, or simply expressing genuine appreciation for the other person's time and attention. Understanding this effect helps you both use it strategically and recognize when you might be overly influenced by strong endings that mask earlier problems or weaknesses. Use the spotlight effect to own a room. Use the spotlight effect to own a room means leveraging people's natural tendency to notice and remember whoever commands attention in a group setting. This technique recognizes that when you confidently position yourself as the focal point of attention, others unconsciously attribute leadership qualities and importance to you, even if you haven't formally been designated as the leader. This approach works because humans are naturally drawn to confident, visible behavior and tend to assume that whoever is getting the most attention deserves that attention. When you speak clearly, move with purpose, and position yourself prominently in group settings, people's brains automatically categorize you as someone significant who should be listened to and respected. The technique involves strategic positioning, confident body language, and well-timed contributions to group discussions. This might mean sitting or standing where you can see and be seen by everyone, speaking with clear projection so everyone can hear you easily, or being the first to respond to important questions or challenges that arise. This approach is particularly effective in meetings, networking events, social gatherings, and any group situation where informal leadership emerges naturally. By claiming appropriate attention rather than blending into the background, you position yourself as someone others look to for guidance and direction. The key is using this technique authentically rather than showboating or attention-seeking. The goal is to contribute value and demonstrate leadership qualities that naturally draw positive attention. When done skillfully, people feel grateful for your leadership rather than annoyed by your prominence. This technique also works because it creates a positive feedback loop where increased attention leads to more opportunities to demonstrate competence, which leads to even more respect and attention from the group. Let them finish the sentence, completion bias. Let them finish the sentence means strategically starting statements and then pausing to allow others to complete your thought, which creates psychological investment and agreement because people become co-creators of the idea rather than passive recipients. This technique leverages the human need for closure and completion to make your points more persuasive and memorable. This approach works because of completion bias, a cognitive tendency where people feel compelled to finish incomplete patterns or statements. When you begin a sentence and pause expectantly, the other person's brain automatically works to complete the thought. Once they've mentally or verbally finished your sentence, they feel ownership of that idea and are much more likely to agree with and remember it. The technique is particularly powerful because it transforms you from someone telling others what to think into someone guiding them to conclusions they reach themselves. When people complete your sentences with the thoughts you intended, they feel smart and engaged rather than lectured to or manipulated. This creates positive associations with both you and the ideas being discussed. This approach works well in sales, teaching, coaching, and persuasive conversations. Instead of stating your conclusion directly, you can say something like, "So the real benefit of this approach is that it," and then pause meaningfully, allowing them to fill in the advantages they find most compelling. Their completion becomes more powerful than anything you could have said. The technique also creates active engagement rather than passive listening. When people know they might need to complete your thoughts, they pay closer attention and become more invested in the conversation. This increased engagement leads to better understanding and retention of your message. The key is choosing natural pause points where the completion feels obvious rather than forced or confusing. Use anchoring, mention a big number first. Use anchoring, mention a big number first means leveraging the cognitive bias where people's judgments are heavily influenced by the first numerical information they encounter in a situation. This technique recognizes that whatever number you mention first becomes a reference point that affects all subsequent numerical evaluations, making it a powerful tool for negotiations, sales, and setting expectations. This approach works because of anchoring bias, one of the most consistent and predictable cognitive biases in human decision-making. Once a number is introduced, people's brains use it as a starting point for comparison, even when that number is completely unrelated to what they're evaluating. Higher anchors lead to higher final numbers, while lower anchors lead to lower final numbers. The technique is particularly effective in salary negotiations, pricing discussions, setting project timelines, or any situation where numerical values are being established. If you're negotiating salary and mention a high but reasonable number first, even if it gets negotiated down, the final result will likely be higher than if you had started with a modest request. This approach also works for setting expectations about effort, time, or resources needed for projects. If you mention that similar projects often take 6 months when you expect yours to take 3, the 3-month timeline seems remarkably efficient rather than standard. This creates appreciation for your effectiveness and realistic timeline management. The key is choosing anchor numbers that are high enough to positively influence the negotiation but not so extreme that they seem unreasonable or damage your credibility. The anchor should feel ambitious but achievable, pushing the boundaries of what seems possible while remaining within the realm of serious consideration. Understanding this bias also helps you recognize when others are using anchoring against you and adjust your thinking accordingly. Sit on the edge of your seat equals engagement signal. Sit on the edge of your seat equals engagement signal means using forward-leaning, attentive posture to communicate intense interest and engagement, which triggers positive responses in others and makes them feel more important and compelling. This technique leverages the fact that people mirror emotions and energy levels, so your physical demonstration of engagement often increases their actual engagement and investment in the conversation. This approach works because body language communicates much more powerfully than words alone. When someone sees you literally sitting on the edge of your seat, leaning forward with focused attention, they interpret this as evidence that what they're saying is fascinating and valuable. This perception makes them feel good about themselves and positive about you as someone who appreciates their thoughts. The technique also triggers reciprocal engagement. When people see that you're fully present and interested, they often increase their own energy and investment in the conversation. Your physical engagement becomes contagious, creating a more dynamic and productive interaction for everyone involved. This approach is particularly effective in meetings, interviews, learning situations, and relationship building. It works especially well when you want to encourage someone to share more information, elaborate on their ideas, or feel valued and heard. The physical demonstration of interest often elicits more detailed and passionate responses than verbal encouragement alone. The forward posture also affects your own mental state. When you sit attentively, you actually become more focused and engaged, which creates a positive feedback loop where your genuine interest increases along with your physical demonstration of that interest. The key is using this posture authentically when you genuinely want to show engagement, rather than as a manipulative technique, so that your body language matches your actual interest level. Count to 3 before responding to emotion. Count to 3 before responding to emotion means implementing a brief pause between experiencing emotional triggers and reacting to them, which allows your rational mind to engage and choose a more thoughtful response rather than acting on immediate emotional impulses. This technique recognizes that the first few seconds after emotional activation are when people make their worst decisions and say things they later regret. This approach works because emotions, especially strong ones like anger, frustration, or hurt, temporarily hijack rational thinking processes. The 3-second pause allows the initial emotional intensity to begin subsiding and gives your prefrontal cortex time to come back online and evaluate the situation more objectively. This brief delay can prevent relationship damage and poor decisions. The technique is particularly valuable in conflicts, criticism, disappointing news, or any situation that triggers strong emotional reactions. Instead of immediately defending yourself, attacking back, or making emotional decisions, the pause allows you to consider multiple response options and choose the one most likely to achieve positive outcomes. This approach also demonstrates emotional intelligence and self-control that others find impressive and trustworthy. When people see that you can remain composed and thoughtful even when provoked, they respect your maturity and are more likely to work constructively with you rather than escalating conflicts. The counting itself serves multiple functions. It gives you something specific to focus on besides the emotional trigger, it creates actual time for physiological calming, and it reminds you that you have choices in how to respond. This small practice can dramatically improve relationship outcomes and decision quality. The key is making this pause a consistent habit rather than trying to remember it only in highly emotional moments when rational thinking is already compromised. What's your story? Not, what do you do? What's your story? Not, what do you do, means replacing the standard social question about someone's job with a more personal and engaging inquiry that invites them to share what matters most to them. This technique recognizes that people are much more than their professional roles and that asking about their story creates deeper, more meaningful connections than surface-level career discussions. This approach works because it gives people permission to share whatever aspect of their life feels most important or interesting to them at that moment. They might talk about their career, but they could also discuss their family, passions, recent adventures, or personal challenges. This flexibility makes the conversation more authentic and engaging for both parties. The question also demonstrates genuine interest in the person as a complete human being rather than just a professional contact. This creates immediate warmth and connection because people feel seen and valued beyond their job titles. It signals that you're interested in meaningful conversation rather than just networking or small talk. This technique is particularly effective at networking events, parties, and social situations where, what do you do, has become a tired cliché that often leads to boring, predictable conversations. Asking about someone's story immediately sets you apart as someone who creates more interesting and memorable interactions. The approach also gives you much richer information about the person, helping you understand their values, interests, and what motivates them. This deeper understanding creates better foundations for friendship, collaboration, or romantic connection than knowing someone's job title ever could. The key is asking with genuine curiosity and being prepared to share your own story in return, creating reciprocal vulnerability and connection that builds stronger relationships from the very first conversation. Speak slower to sound smarter. Speak slower to sound smarter means deliberately reducing your speaking pace to project intelligence, confidence, and thoughtfulness. This technique leverages the psychological association between careful, measured speech and deep thinking, making others perceive you as more knowledgeable and trustworthy than people who speak quickly or rush through their words. This approach works because fast speech is often associated with nervousness, superficial thinking, or lack of confidence, while slower speech suggests careful consideration and deep understanding of the subject matter. When you speak slowly, people assume you're choosing your words carefully because you have valuable insights worth expressing precisely. The technique also makes your words easier to understand and remember. When you slow down, people can process your message more completely rather than struggling to keep up with rapid delivery. This improved comprehension makes your ideas seem clearer and more compelling, which reinforces the perception of intelligence. Slower speech also projects calm confidence that others find attractive and trustworthy. People who can speak slowly in situations where others might rush appear to be in control of themselves and the situation. This self-control is interpreted as a sign of leadership capability and emotional intelligence. This approach is particularly effective in presentations, important conversations, job interviews, and leadership situations where you want to command respect and attention. The key is finding the right pace that feels deliberate without seeming artificial or condescending. The technique also gives you more time to think while speaking, which often leads to better word choices and more coherent arguments. This creates a positive feedback loop where speaking slower actually makes you think more clearly, which justifies others' perception of increased intelligence. Frame it as a choice. Frame it as a choice means presenting requests, suggestions, or instructions in ways that emphasize the other person's autonomy and decision-making power rather than making them feel commanded or pressured. This technique recognizes that people resist feeling controlled but readily cooperate when they feel they're making their own decisions, even when the outcome is the same. This approach works because autonomy is a fundamental human need, and people react negatively when they feel their freedom to choose is being threatened. By framing things as choices, you satisfy this need for autonomy while still guiding people toward your preferred outcome. They feel empowered rather than manipulated, which creates cooperation instead of resistance. The technique involves subtle language changes that acknowledge the person's agency. Instead of saying, "You need to finish this by Friday," you might say, "You can choose to finish this by Friday, or we can discuss alternative timelines." The outcome might be the same, but the person feels respected and in control of their decision. This approach is particularly effective with teenagers, independent-minded employees, and anyone who tends to resist direct instructions or pressure. It's also valuable in sales, parenting, and leadership situations where you need buy-in rather than mere compliance. Framing as choice also encourages people to think through their options more carefully, which often leads them to choose your preferred alternative because they've convinced themselves it's the best option. This self-persuasion is much more powerful and lasting than external pressure. The key is offering genuine choices when possible and using choice language even when options are limited, always respecting the person's intelligence and autonomy while guiding them toward positive decisions. Echo their words, earn their trust. Echo their words, earn their trust means strategically repeating key phrases, important words, or emotional expressions that others use in conversation, which creates a sense of understanding and connection that builds rapport and trust. This technique leverages the psychological principle that people feel validated and understood when they hear their own language reflected back to them. This approach works because hearing your own words repeated by someone else creates a powerful sense of being heard and understood. It signals that the other person is not just waiting for their turn to speak but is genuinely processing and valuing what you're saying. This validation creates positive feelings toward the person doing the echoing. The technique also demonstrates active listening and emotional intelligence that people find attractive and trustworthy. When you echo someone's words, especially emotionally charged ones, you show that you're tuned into not just their ideas but their feelings and priorities. This emotional attunement builds deeper connections than surface-level agreement. This approach is particularly effective in counseling, sales, conflict resolution, and relationship building. It works well when someone is sharing something important or emotional, and you want to show that you truly understand their perspective. The echoing should feel natural and supportive rather than robotic or mocking. The technique also helps clarify communication by confirming that you've understood their message correctly. When you echo their words, they can correct any misunderstandings or elaborate on points that need clarification. This prevents miscommunication and shows your commitment to genuine understanding. The key is choosing the most important or emotionally significant words to echo rather than mindlessly repeating everything, and using a tone that conveys understanding and support rather than mere repetition. Let them talk first, then you win. Let them talk first, then you win means strategically allowing others to share their positions, concerns, or ideas before revealing your own, which gives you valuable information and psychological advantages that lead to better outcomes in negotiations, conflicts, and collaborative situations. This technique recognizes that information is power, and the person who listens first often controls the conversation's direction. This approach works because people reveal crucial information when they talk first, including their priorities, concerns, emotional states, and potential flexibility points. This intelligence allows you to craft responses that address their specific needs and concerns rather than making generic arguments that might miss the mark completely. The technique also creates psychological investment from the other person. When someone has spent time explaining their position to you, they become more invested in reaching an agreement because they've already put energy into the conversation. They want their effort to result in productive outcomes rather than feeling like they wasted their time. Letting others speak first also positions you as a thoughtful listener, which builds trust and makes people more receptive to your eventual contributions. They feel heard and respected, which creates goodwill that makes them more willing to consider your perspective when you do share it. This approach is particularly effective in negotiations, sales conversations, conflict resolution, and problem-solving meetings. It works because it allows you to tailor your response to what you've learned rather than delivering a predetermined pitch that might not address their real concerns. The key is listening actively and genuinely rather than just waiting for your turn to speak, and asking clarifying questions that encourage them to reveal even more useful information before you respond. Point your feet, reveal intent. Point your feet, reveal intent means understanding that people's foot positioning and movement often reveal their true feelings, intentions, and level of engagement more accurately than their facial expressions or words. This technique recognizes that feet are the most honest part of body language because people rarely consciously control their foot positioning while carefully managing their facial expressions and gestures. This approach works because feet are connected to our most basic fight or flight responses and genuine emotional states. When people want to leave a conversation, their feet often point toward exits even while they maintain polite facial expressions. When they're genuinely interested, their feet point toward you. When they're uncomfortable with someone in a group, their feet angle away from that person. The technique is particularly valuable for reading social situations, understanding group dynamics, and gauging genuine interest versus polite engagement. In networking events, you can tell who really wants to continue talking versus who's looking for an escape by watching foot positioning rather than relying on potentially misleading verbal cues. This approach also helps you manage your own nonverbal communication more effectively. By being conscious of where your feet point, you can send clearer signals about your engagement and intentions. Pointing your feet towards someone shows genuine interest and engagement that they'll unconsciously pick up on and appreciate. Understanding foot language is especially useful in romantic situations, business meetings, and social gatherings where people might not be completely direct about their feelings or intentions. It gives you more accurate information about others' true states of mind than relying solely on words or facial expressions. The key is observing foot patterns while also considering context and other body language cues rather than making judgments based solely on foot positioning. Look at their shoes, read their personality. Look at their shoes. Read their personality means using footwear choices as a window into someone's character, values, and lifestyle preferences because shoes often reflect personality traits, attention to detail, and personal priorities in ways that people don't consciously realize they're revealing. This approach works because shoe choices involve multiple personality-revealing factors including practicality versus style preferences, attention to maintenance and detail, financial priorities, and lifestyle needs. Someone who keeps their shoes impeccably clean likely has attention to detail and takes pride in their appearance. Someone who prioritizes comfort over style may value practicality and authenticity over image management. The technique provides useful insights for first meetings, interviews, and social situations where you want to understand someone quickly. Well-maintained expensive shoes might indicate success orientation and attention to detail. Worn but quality shoes could suggest someone who invests in lasting items but isn't focused on constant image updates. Highly practical shoes often belong to people who prioritize function over form in many areas of life. This approach is particularly helpful because people often invest significant thought in their shoe choices without realizing how much they reveal about themselves. Unlike clothing that might be chosen for specific occasions, shoes often represent more consistent personality traits and lifestyle patterns. The technique also works because shoes endure more wear and reveal maintenance habits that reflect character traits like conscientiousness, pride, and attention to detail. Someone who regularly cleans and maintains their shoes likely applies similar care to other areas of their life. The key is using shoe observations as one data point among many rather than making definitive judgments, and considering context like weather, occasion, and cultural factors that might influence footwear choices. Ask for a small favor to build bond. Ask for a small favor to build bond means requesting minor assistance from others to create psychological investment and positive feelings toward you, which strengthens relationships more effectively than only offering help to them. This technique leverages the psychological principle that people develop positive feelings toward those they help, creating a counterintuitive bonding effect. This approach works because of cognitive dissonance theory. When people do favors for others, their brains rationalize this behavior by deciding they must like the person they're helping. The act of helping creates positive feelings and investment in the relationship that wouldn't exist otherwise. This is often called the Benjamin Franklin effect, after his famous use of this technique. The technique is particularly effective because it makes people feel useful, competent, and valued. When you ask for small favors, you're essentially saying that you trust their judgment and appreciate their abilities. This validation creates positive associations with you and makes them more likely to want to help you again in the future. Small favors work better than large ones because they don't create resentment or burden. Examples might include asking for a book recommendation, requesting advice about a local restaurant, or seeking their opinion on a minor decision. These requests feel flattering rather than imposing and are easy for people to fulfill successfully. This approach also opens the door for reciprocity. Once someone has helped you with something small, you can offer to help them with something, creating a positive cycle of mutual support that strengthens the relationship over time. The key is choosing favors that match the relationship level and making the requests genuine rather than manipulative, ensuring that people feel good about helping rather than used or tricked. Use silence to own space. Use silence to own space means strategically employing quiet moments to demonstrate confidence, create psychological presence, and command respect in social or professional situations. This technique recognizes that people who are comfortable with silence often appear more powerful and self-assured than those who feel compelled to fill every quiet moment with words or noise. This approach works because silence creates a psychological vacuum that naturally draws attention and respect. When everyone else is talking, the person who remains quietly confident stands out and appears to possess inner strength and wisdom. People instinctively assume that someone comfortable with silence has something valuable to say when they choose to speak. The technique also demonstrates emotional regulation and self-control that others find impressive and trustworthy. Someone who doesn't need to constantly prove themselves through words appears secure and grounded. This confidence becomes magnetic, drawing others toward them and making their eventual contributions carry more weight and impact. Silence can be particularly effective in meetings, negotiations, and social gatherings where you want to project authority without being aggressive or dominating. It allows you to observe group dynamics, read the room accurately, and choose your moments to contribute more strategically than people who jump into every conversation. This approach also gives you time to think more clearly and formulate better responses than those who feel pressured to react immediately. The pause between stimulus and response often leads to higher quality contributions that reinforce others' perception of your wisdom and thoughtfulness. The key is using silence purposefully rather than letting it happen due to shyness or uncertainty, and learning to be genuinely comfortable with quiet moments rather than just enduring them while waiting to speak. Show palm equals gain trust instantly. Show palm equals gain trust instantly means using open palm gestures and positioning to communicate honesty, openness, and peaceful intentions, which triggers subconscious trust responses in others. This technique leverages deeply embedded human instincts that associate visible palms with safety and concealed hands with potential threat or deception. This approach works because palm displays are hardwired into human psychology as signals of harmlessness and honesty. Throughout human evolution, showing palms indicated that someone wasn't carrying weapons or hiding dangerous objects. These ancient survival instincts still influence how we respond to others today, making open palms one of the fastest ways to create positive first impressions. The technique involves gesturing with palms visible, resting hands on tables with palms up, and avoiding positions where hands are hidden in pockets, behind backs, or under tables. Even slight palm visibility during conversation creates subconscious comfort and openness in others that makes them more receptive to your words and presence. This approach is particularly effective in presentations, negotiations, first meetings, and any situation where you want to quickly establish trust and rapport. It's also valuable when delivering difficult news or having sensitive conversations where you need others to believe in your sincerity and good intentions. The palm showing technique works across cultures and contexts because it taps into universal human responses rather than learned social conventions. People feel safer and more trusting around someone whose hands are visible and open, even when they can't articulate why they feel more comfortable. The key is making palm displays feel natural rather than forced, incorporating them into normal gestures and positioning rather than obviously showing palms in artificial ways that might seem manipulative. Compliment behind their back reaches their ears. Compliment behind their back means strategically saying positive things about someone when they're not present, knowing that genuine praise typically finds its way back to the person and creates much stronger positive feelings than direct compliments. This technique leverages the fact that praise heard through third parties feels more authentic and valuable than praise given directly. This approach works because compliments shared behind someone's back seem more genuine since there's no obvious personal benefit to saying them. When people hear that you praise them in their absence, they assume your comments were motivated by honest appreciation rather than politeness or manipulation. This perceived authenticity makes the praise much more meaningful and impactful. The technique also demonstrates character and integrity that builds your reputation as someone trustworthy and generous. People appreciate knowing that you speak positively about them when they're not around to hear it, which suggests you're not just being polite to their face while harboring different feelings privately. This approach is particularly effective in workplace situations, social circles, and community settings where information flows naturally between people. The compliments should be genuine and specific rather than generic praise, focusing on actual qualities or achievements you truly appreciate about the person. The strategy works because it builds goodwill indirectly while also enhancing your own reputation as someone who notices and appreciates others' positive qualities. People want to be around those who speak well of others rather than those who gossip negatively or remain silent about others' strengths. The key is ensuring the compliments are authentic and appropriate, and trusting that positive words have a way of reaching their intended recipients without you having to orchestrate their delivery directly. Use we instead of you. Use we instead of you means framing conversations and feedback using inclusive language that creates partnership and shared responsibility rather than creating distance and potential defensiveness. This technique transforms potentially adversarial interactions into collaborative problem-solving by making the other person feel like you're working together rather than being judged or directed by you. This approach works because you statements often trigger defensive responses, especially when discussing problems or needed changes. Saying, "You need to fix this," creates separation and implied criticism, while "we need to address this" creates partnership and shared ownership of both the problem and solution. The simple word choice dramatically changes the emotional dynamic of the conversation. The technique is particularly effective in management situations, relationship discussions, and collaborative work environments where you need to address issues without creating resistance or resentment. It helps people feel supported rather than attacked, which makes them more open to feedback and more willing to work toward solutions. Using "we" language also demonstrates leadership thinking and collaborative mindset that others find attractive and inspiring. It shows that you see yourself as part of the solution rather than someone who identifies problems for others to solve. This inclusive approach builds stronger teams and relationships. This approach works because it acknowledges that most challenges involve multiple people and factors rather than placing all responsibility on one individual. Even when someone has made a mistake, framing the discussion around "how we can prevent this in the future" is more productive than focusing on individual blame. The key is using "we" genuinely when you truly intend to be involved in solutions rather than using it manipulatively to soften criticism while still placing all responsibility on others. Break the script, control the moment. Break the script, control the moment means deliberately disrupting expected conversational patterns or social routines to capture attention, create memorable interactions, and influence the direction of encounters. This technique recognizes that most social interactions follow predictable patterns, and the person who breaks these patterns often gains psychological control and creates more engaging experiences. This approach works because people operate on mental autopilot during routine social exchanges, and unexpected responses force them to become more present and engaged. When you break the script, you capture their full attention and create memorable moments that stand out from typical boring interactions they'll quickly forget. The technique involves responding in thoughtful but unexpected ways to common questions or situations. Instead of "fine" when asked how you are, you might say, "I'm having the kind of day that makes me grateful for coffee and second chances." This breaks the automatic pattern and creates genuine connection and interest. This approach is particularly effective in networking events, job interviews, first dates, and sales situations where everyone tends to use the same predictable responses. Breaking the script makes you memorable and positions you as someone interesting and creative rather than just another face in the crowd. The technique also demonstrates confidence and spontaneity that others find attractive and engaging. People who can break social scripts appropriately appear more authentic and less concerned with fitting in perfectly, which often makes them more magnetic and influential. The key is breaking scripts in positive, engaging ways rather than being disruptive or inappropriate, and reading the situation to ensure your script breaking enhances rather than derails the interaction. Mirror their breathing to calm them. Mirror their breathing to calm them means subtly matching and then gradually slowing your breathing pattern to help another person relax and feel more comfortable, which works through the psychological principle of unconscious synchronization and the physiological connection between breathing and emotional states. This approach works because breathing is closely connected to emotional regulation, and people naturally tend to synchronize their physiological rhythms with those around them. When you match someone's breathing pattern and then gradually slow yours down, their breathing often follows suit, which triggers their relaxation response and helps them feel calmer. The technique is particularly effective in tense situations, when someone is anxious or upset, or when you want to create a calm, peaceful atmosphere for important conversations. It works because it addresses the physical component of emotional states rather than just trying to change thoughts or feelings directly. This approach also creates subtle rapport and connection because synchronized breathing makes people feel unconsciously understood and supported. They may not realize why they feel more comfortable with you, but the breathing synchronization creates a sense of harmony and safety that builds trust. The mirroring should be subtle and natural rather than obvious or artificial. You simply observe their breathing rhythm and gradually adjust yours to match, then slowly deepen and slow your breathing to guide them toward a calmer state. This works particularly well when combined with other calming behaviors like slower speech and relaxed body language. The key is patience and subtlety, allowing the synchronization to happen naturally rather than forcing it, and using this technique genuinely to help others feel more comfortable rather than as a manipulation tactic. Use "even if" to overcome doubt. Use even if to overcome doubt means addressing potential objections or concerns by acknowledging them up front and then showing how your proposal still makes sense despite those concerns. This technique disarms resistance by demonstrating that you've considered potential problems and have confidence in your solution, even accounting for worst-case scenarios. This approach works because it addresses the elephant in the room before others can raise it as an objection. When you say, even if this challenge occurs, we can still succeed because. You show thorough thinking and realistic planning that builds confidence in your proposal. People feel more comfortable moving forward when they see you've anticipated potential problems. The technique also demonstrates intellectual honesty that builds trust and credibility. Instead of presenting unrealistically optimistic scenarios, you acknowledge that challenges might arise while maintaining confidence in your ability to handle them. This balanced perspective makes you seem more trustworthy and competent. This approach is particularly effective in sales presentations, project proposals, and persuasive conversations where people naturally have concerns or doubts. By addressing potential problems proactively, you prevent them from becoming larger obstacles later and show that you're prepared for various scenarios. The even-if framework also helps you think through your own proposals more thoroughly, ensuring you've considered potential weaknesses and have realistic contingency plans. This preparation makes your presentation stronger and more convincing. The key is choosing the most likely or concerning potential objections to address rather than trying to cover every possible scenario, and maintaining genuine confidence in your solution rather than just trying to overcome objections through verbal techniques. Act like you forgot they're famous. Act like you forgot they're famous means treating high-status or well-known people with normal human respect and interest rather than excessive deference or starstruck behavior, which often makes them feel more comfortable and creates better connections than typical fan interactions. This approach works because famous or high-status people are accustomed to being treated differently, which can feel isolating and artificial. When you interact with them as regular human beings rather than celebrities or VIPs, you offer them something rare. Genuine normal human connection. This authenticity often makes them feel more relaxed and appreciated for who they are rather than their status. The technique involves engaging with their ideas, asking about their interests as a person, and responding to them with the same warmth and respect you'd show anyone else. This doesn't mean being disrespectful or ignoring their achievements, but rather focusing on the human connection instead of their fame or position. This approach is particularly effective because it demonstrates confidence and authenticity that high-status people find refreshing. Someone who isn't intimidated by status or seeking special treatment appears more interesting and worth knowing than typical admirers or people trying to use their connection for personal gain. The strategy also works because it allows for more genuine relationship building. When you treat someone as a person first, you can discover shared interests, values, and experiences that create real connection beyond their public persona or professional achievements. The key is being genuinely interested in them as individuals while maintaining appropriate respect, not using false casualness as a way to seem impressive or different from other people they meet. You seem like equals instant rapport. You seem like equals instant rapport means using perceptive observations about someone's character or interests to create immediate connection and make them feel understood. This technique works by demonstrating that you're paying attention to who they are as a person and can see beyond surface-level interactions to recognize their deeper qualities or preferences. This approach works because people crave being seen and understood for who they really are beneath their social masks. When you make insightful observations like, "You seem like someone who appreciates quality over quantity," or, "You strike me as the type who notices details others miss," you're offering them recognition of their authentic self. The technique is particularly powerful because it positions you as someone with good intuition and emotional intelligence. When your observations are accurate, the other person feels impressed by your perceptiveness and drawn to someone who gets them so quickly. This creates instant rapport that would normally take much longer to develop. This approach works well in networking situations, first dates, and initial meetings where you want to move beyond small talk quickly. The key is making observations that are positive and likely to be accurate based on subtle cues you've picked up from their behavior, appearance, or conversation style. The technique also invites confirmation or elaboration, which deepens the conversation naturally. When you say, "You seem like someone who has interesting stories," they often respond by sharing those stories, creating more meaningful exchange than typical surface-level chat. The success depends on being genuinely observant rather than making generic statements, and choosing observations that are flattering but realistic rather than obviously manipulative compliments. Pretend you're the host. Pretend you're the host means taking on hosting responsibilities and mindset in social situations even when you're not the actual host, which positions you as a leader, makes others feel welcomed and cared for, and gives you natural authority and influence in group settings. This approach works because hosts naturally become the focal point of social situations and are looked to for guidance and direction. When you adopt hosting behaviors like introducing people to each other, ensuring everyone has what they need, and facilitating conversations, others unconsciously begin to see you as the person in charge. The technique involves behaviors like greeting new arrivals, making introductions between people who don't know each other, asking if anyone needs drinks or directions, and generally ensuring everyone feels included and comfortable. These actions demonstrate leadership and social intelligence that others find attractive and reassuring. This approach is particularly effective at networking events, parties, and professional gatherings where you want to build connections and establish yourself as someone worth knowing. It works because hosting behaviors make you indispensable to the social dynamic rather than just another attendee hoping to be noticed. The technique also gives you natural reasons to approach and engage with anyone in the room. As the host, you have permission and even obligation to check in with everyone, introduce yourself, and facilitate connections. This removes the awkwardness of approaching strangers and gives you a valuable role to play. The key is adopting hosting behaviors authentically rather than seeming pushy or taking over inappropriately, and focusing on genuinely helping others have better experiences rather than just using the role for personal advantage. Ask about childhood equals instant connection. Ask about childhood equals instant connection means inquiring about someone's early experiences, family background, or formative memories to create deep emotional bonds quickly. This technique taps into the powerful emotions and foundational experiences that shape who people are, often revealing core values and creating vulnerability that builds strong relationships. This approach works because childhood memories are typically emotionally charged and personally meaningful in ways that current events or professional topics cannot match. When someone shares stories about their upbringing, favorite childhood activities, or family traditions, they're revealing intimate parts of their identity and value system. The technique creates connection because discussing childhood often evokes positive emotions and nostalgia that people associate with you after the conversation. These warm feelings create psychological bonds that make people want to spend more time with you and share more personal information in future interactions. This approach is particularly effective in dating situations, friendship building, and mentoring relationships where you want to move beyond surface-level acquaintance quickly. Questions like, "What's your favorite childhood memory?" or "What was your family like growing up?" often lead to rich, revealing conversations. The technique also works because childhood experiences often explain current personality traits, preferences, and behaviors. Understanding someone's background helps you connect with them more effectively and shows that you're interested in understanding who they are at a deeper level. The key is asking with genuine curiosity and being prepared to share your own childhood experiences reciprocally, creating mutual vulnerability that strengthens the connection rather than making the conversation feel like an interview. Ask questions that make them reflect. Ask questions that make them reflect means posing thoughtful inquiries that encourage deeper thinking about values, experiences, and perspectives rather than asking for simple factual information. This technique creates more meaningful conversations while positioning you as someone who cares about the other person's inner world and intellectual depth. This approach works because reflective questions demonstrate that you see the person as someone with valuable insights and complex inner experiences worth exploring. Instead of asking, "What do you do for work?" you might ask, "What drew you to that field?" or "What's the most rewarding part of what you do?" These questions invite storytelling and self-examination. The technique creates connection because when people reflect on meaningful aspects of their lives, they often discover new insights about themselves during the conversation. This self-discovery process creates positive associations with you as someone who helps them think more deeply and understand themselves better. This approach is particularly effective in mentoring relationships, intimate conversations, and situations where you want to build genuine understanding rather than just exchanging surface information. Reflective questions often reveal core values, motivations, and experiences that create foundation for deeper relationships. The questions also demonstrate emotional intelligence and genuine interest that people find rare and valuable. Most conversations stay at superficial levels, so someone who asks thoughtful questions stands out as particularly engaging and worth knowing better. The key is asking questions you're genuinely curious about and being prepared to engage thoughtfully with their answers rather than just using questions as conversation fillers or ways to seem impressive. Self-deprecate, then take the stage. Self-deprecate, then take the stage means using humble or self-critical humor to disarm others and make yourself appear approachable, followed by demonstrating competence and confidence that creates a powerful contrast. This technique builds trust through vulnerability while establishing credibility through subsequent performance. This approach works because self-deprecation makes you seem humble and relatable, which reduces others' defenses and makes them more receptive to your ideas. When you follow this vulnerability with competent performance or insightful contributions, the contrast makes your abilities seem even more impressive than if you had led with confidence alone. The technique is particularly effective because it violates expectations in a positive way. People expect either consistent humility or consistent confidence, but the combination of self-aware humor followed by competent leadership creates memorable impressions and builds both likability and respect simultaneously. This approach works well in presentations, leadership situations, and social settings where you need to establish both connection and credibility. The self-deprecation creates warmth and approachability, while the subsequent demonstration of competence establishes your authority and expertise. The technique also shows emotional intelligence and self-awareness that people find attractive in leaders and colleagues. Someone who can acknowledge their imperfections while still performing confidently appears both human and capable, which is an appealing combination. The key is choosing appropriate self-deprecation that doesn't undermine your credibility and following it with genuine competence rather than just bragging. The contrast must be authentic rather than manipulative to create the desired effect. Sit diagonally, not head-on. Sit diagonally, not head-on means positioning yourself at an angle rather than directly across from someone during conversations, which creates a more comfortable and collaborative atmosphere by reducing confrontational energy and making the interaction feel more natural and less intimidating. This approach works because face-to-face positioning can unconsciously trigger defensive responses and feelings of being interrogated or challenged. Diagonal positioning feels more casual and collaborative, like two people working together rather than facing off against each other. This subtle change in geometry significantly impacts the emotional tone of conversations. The technique is particularly effective in difficult conversations, interviews, counseling situations, and first dates where you want to minimize defensiveness and create comfort. The angled position allows both people to look at each other naturally while also having the option to look away without seeming rude or disengaged. This approach also works because it mimics how people naturally position themselves when they're comfortable and collaborating. Think about how friends sit together versus how adversaries face each other. The diagonal positioning signals cooperation and shared focus rather than opposition. The technique can be applied in various settings by choosing seats that create angles rather than direct opposition, or by slightly turning your chair or body to create the diagonal relationship even in formally arranged seating. This small adjustment often leads to noticeably more relaxed and productive conversations. The key is making the positioning feel natural rather than obviously calculated, and ensuring that the angle still allows for comfortable eye contact and conversation flow without seeming disrespectful or disinterested. Say their name at goodbye. Say their name at goodbye means ending conversations or encounters by using the person's name in your farewell, which creates a more personal and memorable conclusion that strengthens the connection and increases the likelihood of positive future interactions. This approach works because hearing your name triggers positive neural responses and creates a sense of personal recognition and importance. When someone uses your name while saying goodbye, It signals that they see you as an individual worth remembering rather than just another anonymous encounter. This personal touch makes the ending more impactful and memorable. The technique also demonstrates that you were paying attention during the interaction and cared enough to remember their name, which shows respect and interest. This attention to personal details makes people feel valued and creates positive associations with you that carry forward into future encounters. This approach is particularly effective in networking situations, business meetings, customer service interactions, and social gatherings where you want to leave strong final impressions. The personalized goodbye often determines how people remember the entire interaction and whether they look forward to seeing you again. The technique works because it transforms a generic social routine into a moment of personal connection. Instead of a simple, goodbye, or, see you later, saying, goodbye, Sarah, or, it was great meeting you, Michael, creates a warmer, more human conclusion to your time together. The key is using their name naturally rather than awkwardly forcing it into the goodbye, and ensuring you have their name correct rather than guessing or mispronouncing it, which would have the opposite effect. Fake a deadline to get faster results. Fake a deadline to get faster results means creating artificial time constraints to motivate others to complete tasks or make decisions more quickly, which works because deadlines trigger urgency and focus that wouldn't exist in open-ended situations. This approach works because of Parkinson's law, which states that work expands to fill the time available for completion. When people believe they have unlimited time, they tend to procrastinate or work inefficiently. Creating a deadline forces prioritization and focused effort that leads to faster completion and often better results. The technique is particularly effective because urgency eliminates perfectionism and overthinking that can paralyze decision-making. When people feel time pressure, they make decisions with available information rather than endlessly researching or deliberating. This often leads to adequate solutions delivered quickly rather than perfect solutions delivered late. This approach works in project management, sales situations, and personal productivity contexts where you need others to take action rather than continuing to think about it. The deadline creates external motivation for people who might otherwise lack internal urgency. The technique also works because it provides a clear structure and endpoint that makes tasks feel more manageable. Instead of an overwhelming open-ended project, a deadline breaks the work into a defined timeframe that feels achievable and concrete. The key is creating believable deadlines that seem reasonable and necessary rather than obviously artificial, and being prepared to follow through appropriately if the deadline isn't met. The deadline should motivate action without creating unnecessary stress or damaging relationships. Use humor first, logic later. Use humor first. Logic later means leading with levity and warmth before presenting logical arguments or serious information, which creates emotional receptivity that makes people more open to your rational points. This technique recognizes that people make decisions emotionally first and then use logic to justify those emotional choices. This approach works because humor disarms defensiveness and creates positive emotional states that make people more receptive to new information. When people are laughing or smiling, their psychological barriers are lowered, making them more willing to consider ideas they might otherwise resist. The positive emotions generated by humor become associated with your subsequent logical arguments. The technique is particularly effective in presentations, difficult conversations, and persuasive situations where you need to deliver challenging or complex information. Starting with appropriate humor creates goodwill and engagement that carries through the more serious parts of your message. This approach also works because humor demonstrates confidence and likability that make you more credible and trustworthy. People are more likely to accept logical arguments from someone they like and feel comfortable with than from someone who seems rigid or intimidating. The humor establishes you as approachable while your logic establishes you as competent. The technique requires choosing humor that's appropriate for the audience and situation while avoiding anything that might offend or alienate. The goal is to create warmth and connection, not to entertain or show off your comedic skills. The key is transitioning smoothly from humor to serious content while maintaining the positive energy and receptivity you've created, ensuring that your logical points benefit from the emotional foundation you've established. Ask, how did that make you feel? Ask, how did that make you feel? means focusing conversations on emotional experiences rather than just facts or events, which creates deeper connection and understanding by acknowledging the emotional reality of people's experiences. This technique recognizes that emotions drive most human behavior and decision-making more than logical considerations. This approach works because people rarely get asked about their emotional experiences in everyday conversation, making this question feel special and caring. When you inquire about feelings, you're showing that you care about their inner world and understand that their emotional response matters as much as what actually happened. The technique is particularly powerful because it validates the person's emotional experience and gives them permission to express feelings they might not have fully processed yet. Often, people need to talk through their emotions to understand them better, and your question provides that opportunity. This approach works well in counseling, coaching, leadership, and intimate relationships where you want to build trust and understanding. It helps people feel heard and supported while giving you valuable insight into what really matters to them and how they process experiences. The question also demonstrates emotional intelligence that people find attractive and trustworthy. Someone who asks about feelings shows they understand that emotions are important and valid, which makes others feel safer opening up about sensitive topics. The key is asking with genuine curiosity and compassion rather than clinical detachment, and being prepared to listen without judgment or immediate attempts to fix or minimize their emotional experience. Break tension with a whisper. Break tension with a whisper means deliberately lowering your voice to nearly a whisper when conflicts or stress escalate, which forces others to lean in and pay closer attention while automatically de-escalating the emotional intensity of the situation. This technique works by creating intimacy and calm in moments of potential chaos. This approach works because whispers are psychologically associated with secrets, intimacy, and importance, which immediately shifts the dynamic from confrontation to collaboration. When you whisper, others must quiet themselves to hear you, which naturally reduces their arousal level and creates a more peaceful atmosphere. The technique is particularly effective because it violates expectations in tense situations. While others might be raising their voices or becoming more agitated, your whisper creates contrast that draws attention and demonstrates unusual self-control. This unexpected response often disarms aggression and creates space for more productive communication. This approach works well in family conflicts, workplace disputes, and any situation where emotions are running high and normal communication has broken down. The whisper forces everyone to slow down and focus more carefully on what's being said rather than just reacting emotionally. The technique also positions you as the calm, rational person in the situation, which often gives you natural authority and influence. People tend to follow the lead of whoever seems most in control of themselves and the situation. The key is whispering something genuinely helpful or insightful rather than just changing your volume, and ensuring your whispered words are worth the attention they command by being particularly wise or caring. Ask to borrow a pen, instant bond trick. Ask to borrow a pen means making small, reasonable requests that allow others to help you, which creates psychological investment and positive feelings toward you through the act of providing assistance. This technique leverages the principle that people develop affection for those they help, making simple requests a powerful bonding tool. This approach works because helping others creates cognitive dissonance that our brains resolve by deciding we must like the person we're helping. When someone lends you a pen, their brain rationalizes this helpful behavior by concluding that you must be likable and worthy of assistance. This creates positive feelings that wouldn't exist otherwise. The technique is particularly effective because borrowing a pen is such a small, reasonable request that almost anyone will grant it without hesitation or resentment. It's universal, non-threatening, and creates an immediate interaction that breaks the ice in natural ways that don't feel forced or manipulative. This approach works well in networking situations, first meetings, and classroom or office environments where you want to create initial connections with new people. The simple interaction provides a natural conversation starter and creates a small shared experience that forms the foundation for further relationship building. The request also demonstrates appropriate vulnerability and humanity that makes you seem approachable rather than overly self-sufficient or intimidating. People like being needed in small, manageable ways that make them feel helpful and important. The key is making the request genuinely when you actually need a pen rather than using it as an obvious manipulation technique, and following up with appropriate gratitude and friendly interaction that builds on the initial connection. Smile with your eyes, not just mouth. Smile with your eyes means creating genuine expressions of warmth and happiness that engage your entire face, particularly the area around your eyes, rather than just moving your mouth muscles. This technique recognizes that authentic smiles involve the whole face and create much stronger positive responses than forced or fake smiles. This approach works because genuine smiles, called Duchenne smiles, involve the contraction of muscles around the eyes that create slight crinkling or narrowing. These eye movements are difficult to fake and signal authentic positive emotion that others unconsciously recognize and respond to with trust and warmth. The technique is particularly powerful because people are naturally suspicious of fake smiles but instinctively drawn to genuine ones. When your eyes smile along with your mouth, you create an authentic expression of warmth that makes others feel genuinely welcomed and appreciated rather than just politely acknowledged. This approach works in all social and professional situations where you want to create positive connections and demonstrate genuine interest in others. Eye smiles are universally recognized across cultures as signs of authentic friendliness and create immediate positive impressions. The technique also affects your own emotional state. When you engage the muscles around your eyes in smiling, you trigger genuine positive emotions more effectively than mouth-only smiles. This creates authentic warmth that others can sense and respond to positively. The key is thinking genuinely positive thoughts about the person or situation while smiling, which naturally engages all the facial muscles involved in authentic expressions of happiness and warmth rather than trying to mechanically control individual muscle groups. End with a compliment, always. End with a compliment. Always means concluding every interaction, conversation, or encounter with some form of genuine appreciation or positive observation, which ensures people leave feeling good about themselves and positive about their time with you. This technique leverages the recency effect to create lasting positive impressions. This approach works because the last thing people hear significantly influences how they remember the entire interaction. When you end with a compliment, that positive feeling colors their memory of everything that came before, even if parts of the conversation were challenging or neutral. The technique is particularly effective because most people end conversations casually or focus on logistics rather than emotional connection. By consistently ending with appreciation, you create a signature experience that makes you memorable and pleasant to interact with. This approach works in professional settings, personal relationships, customer service, and casual social interactions. The compliment should be genuine and specific rather than generic praise, focusing on something you actually noticed or appreciated about the person or their contribution to your conversation. The technique also demonstrates emotional intelligence and gratitude that people find attractive and refreshing. In a world where many interactions end abruptly or impersonally, taking time to offer genuine appreciation makes you stand out as someone who values human connection. The key is finding something authentic to compliment rather than forcing fake praise, and making the compliment specific enough to feel genuine rather than like a generic closing technique everyone will recognize. Be interested, not interesting. Be interested, not interesting means focusing your energy on genuinely learning about others rather than trying to impress them with your own stories, knowledge, or accomplishments. This technique recognizes that people are naturally drawn to those who make them feel heard and important rather than those who simply seem impressive. This approach works because everyone craves feeling understood and valued, but few people consistently provide this experience. When you focus intensely on learning about others, you fulfill this deep psychological need and create powerful positive associations with yourself as someone who makes them feel special and important. The technique is particularly effective because it's counterintuitive to most people's social instincts. Most people try to appear interesting by sharing impressive stories or demonstrating knowledge, but this often makes others feel less important or creates competition rather than connection. This approach works well in networking, dating, friendship building, and professional relationships where you want to create genuine bonds rather than just superficial impressions. People remember and seek out those who make them feel interesting rather than those who merely seem interesting themselves. The technique also takes pressure off you to perform or impress, allowing you to relax and focus on genuine curiosity rather than managing your image. This authentic interest often reveals fascinating information and creates more engaging conversations than prepared stories ever could. The key is developing genuine curiosity about others rather than just using questions as a technique, and sharing appropriately about yourself when asked rather than completely avoiding self-disclosure, which can seem artificial or one-sided. Ask, "What are you thinking right now?" Ask, "What are you thinking right now?" means inviting immediate access to someone's present moment thoughts and mental state, which creates intimacy and connection by showing interest in their inner world and often reveals insights that wouldn't emerge through conventional conversation topics. This approach works because it's such an unusual question that it creates immediate presence and intimacy. Most conversations focus on past events or future plans, but asking about current thoughts brings both people into the present moment and creates a sense of shared immediacy and connection. The technique is particularly powerful because it often catches people in genuine, unfiltered moments of honesty. When asked what they're thinking right now, people frequently share more authentic responses than they would to planned or predictable questions. This authenticity creates deeper connection and understanding. This approach works well in romantic relationships, close friendships, and mentoring situations where you want to deepen intimacy and understanding. It's also effective when conversations feel stuck or superficial and you want to shift to more meaningful territory. The question also demonstrates confidence and emotional intelligence because it shows you're comfortable with potentially awkward or revealing answers. This courage often encourages others to be more open and honest than they would be in typical social interactions. The key is asking with genuine curiosity rather than as a conversation technique, and being prepared to share your own current thoughts reciprocally to maintain the intimacy and vulnerability you've created through the question. Raise eyebrows when you see someone. Raising your eyebrows when you see someone is a powerful non-verbal greeting that instantly creates connection and warmth. This simple facial expression communicates recognition, surprise, and genuine pleasure at seeing the other person. It's a universal human signal that says, "I notice you," and "I'm happy to see you," without speaking a single word. The eyebrow flash happens naturally when we encounter someone we like or respect. It lasts just a fraction of a second, but its impact is profound. This micro-expression triggers positive feelings in the other person because it mimics the natural response we have when seeing someone important to us. It creates an immediate sense of familiarity and trust. When you deliberately use the eyebrow flash, you're essentially hacking into people's subconscious social programming. Their brain registers this signal as friendliness and openness, even if they don't consciously notice what you did. This makes them more likely to respond positively to you in the conversation that follows. The key is authenticity. The eyebrow raise should feel natural and spontaneous, not forced or exaggerated. Practice this in low-stakes situations first. Try it with cashiers, coworkers, or acquaintances. You'll notice how people's demeanor shifts slightly more positive when you greet them this way. This technique works because it shows you're genuinely engaged and present. In a world where people often feel ignored or overlooked, this simple acknowledgement stands out. It demonstrates emotional intelligence and social awareness. People remember those who make them feel seen and valued. The eyebrow flash is particularly effective in professional settings. It can help break the ice in meetings, make networking feel more natural, and create rapport with clients or colleagues. It's a subtle way to establish dominance through friendliness rather than aggression. Remember that timing matters. The eyebrow flash should happen at the moment of recognition, not after you've already been talking. It's most powerful as an initial greeting gesture that sets a positive tone for the entire interaction. Say, "Most people don't know this." Saying, "Most people don't know this," is a psychological trigger that instantly captures attention and positions you as someone with insider knowledge. This phrase works because it appeals to people's natural desire to be part of an exclusive group and their fear of missing out on important information. The power of this phrase lies in its ability to create curiosity and establish your credibility simultaneously. When someone hears these words, their brain immediately shifts into learning mode. They want to know what secret information you're about to share, and they automatically assume you must be knowledgeable to possess this hidden insight. This technique leverages the scarcity principle. Humans are naturally drawn to rare or exclusive information. By suggesting that the knowledge you're about to share is uncommon, you make it seem more valuable. People pay closer attention to information they believe others don't have access to. The phrase also creates a sense of intimacy and trust. You're essentially saying, "I'm about to let you in on something special." This makes the listener feel chosen and creates a bond between you and them. They become more receptive to your message because they feel like they're receiving privileged information. Use this phrase strategically, not constantly. Overusing it will diminish its impact and make you seem manipulative. Save it for moments when you genuinely have valuable insights to share. The information that follows should actually be useful or interesting to maintain credibility. This technique works particularly well in presentations, sales conversations, and teaching situations. It can transform mundane information into something that feels important and worth remembering. However, make sure you can deliver on the promise. The information you share after this setup needs to be genuinely valuable. The key is authenticity. Don't use this phrase to dress up common knowledge. Your audience will quickly recognize if you're overselling ordinary information. Instead, use it when you have genuine insights, unique perspectives, or lesser-known facts that will truly benefit your listeners. Lower the volume to command silence. Lowering your volume to command silence is a counterintuitive but highly effective leadership technique that works by making people strain to hear you. Instead of raising your voice to get attention, you deliberately speak more quietly, which forces others to quiet down and focus on your words. This technique works because it creates a natural hushing effect. When someone speaks softly in a noisy environment, people instinctively tell others to be quiet so they can hear. The soft-spoken person becomes the center of attention without demanding it aggressively. This approach demonstrates confidence and control in a subtle, non-threatening way. The psychology behind this method is rooted in curiosity and respect. When someone lowers their voice, it signals that what they're about to say is important and perhaps confidential. People lean in, both literally and figuratively, because they don't want to miss crucial information. It creates an intimate atmosphere even in group settings. This approach is particularly powerful because it contrasts sharply with most people's instinct to speak louder when they want attention. By doing the opposite, you stand out and appear more sophisticated and in control. It suggests that your words carry weight and don't need volume to be heard. The technique requires confidence and patience. You must be comfortable with brief moments of continued noise while people adjust to your lower volume. Don't immediately speak louder if people don't quiet down right away. Maintain your soft tone and wait. Usually, someone else will help by asking others to listen. This works exceptionally well in meetings, presentations, and group discussions. It can help you regain control of a room that's getting too chaotic without appearing authoritarian. Teachers often use this technique to manage classroom noise levels effectively. Practice this in various situations to build your confidence. Start with smaller groups where it's easier to manage. Remember that your body language should match your approach. Maintain calm, confident posture while speaking softly to reinforce your message of quiet authority. Ask for help like a teammate. Asking for help like a teammate transforms requests from burdens into collaborative opportunities. Instead of positioning yourself as needy or subordinate, you frame the situation as two equals working together toward a common goal. This approach makes people more willing to assist because it feels like partnership rather than charity. The key difference lies in your language and attitude. Rather than saying, "I need help," or, "Can you do this for me?" you might say, "Could we figure this out together?" or, "What's your take on this challenge?" This subtle shift in phrasing changes the entire dynamic of the interaction. This technique works because it appeals to people's desire to feel valued and competent. When you ask for help like a teammate, you're acknowledging their expertise and treating them as an equal contributor. People enjoy feeling useful and appreciated for their skills and knowledge. The approach also reduces the psychological burden on the helper. They don't feel like they're being imposed upon or taking on extra work. Instead, they feel like they're contributing to a shared effort. This makes them more likely to offer genuine, thoughtful assistance rather than minimal compliance. Body language and tone are crucial when using this technique. Maintain eye contact, use open posture, and speak with confidence. Your demeanor should convey that you value their input, not that you're desperate for their help. This creates a sense of mutual respect and collaboration. This method builds stronger relationships over time. People remember those who made them feel like valued contributors rather than just resources to be used. It creates positive associations with helping you and makes them more likely to offer assistance in the future. The technique is particularly effective in workplace settings where hierarchy can create barriers to honest communication. By approaching colleagues as teammates, you break down these barriers and create more open, productive working relationships. It also works well in personal situations where you want to maintain dignity while seeking support. Pause before you answer equals authority. Pausing before you answer is a powerful demonstration of authority that shows you're thoughtful, confident, and in control of the conversation. This brief silence communicates that you're not reactive or desperate to fill every moment with words. Instead, you're deliberately considering your response, which makes whatever you say next carry more weight. The pause works because it creates anticipation and shows respect for the question. When someone asks you something and you immediately respond, it can seem like you're giving a superficial or rehearsed answer. But when you pause, even for just 2 or 3 seconds, it signals that you're taking the question seriously and formulating a considered response. This technique also demonstrates emotional regulation and self-control. In our fast-paced world, the ability to slow down and think before speaking is increasingly rare and valuable. It shows that you're not easily flustered or pressured into hasty responses. This composure naturally commands respect from others. The pause gives you time to organize your thoughts and deliver a more coherent, impactful answer. Instead of stumbling through your response or saying the first thing that comes to mind, you can structure your reply for maximum effectiveness. This leads to clearer communication and better outcomes. However, the pause must feel natural, not awkward. Practice this technique in low-pressure situations first. The goal is a thoughtful pause, not an uncomfortable silence. 2 to 4 seconds is usually optimal. Any longer might make others wonder if you heard the question. This approach is particularly powerful in professional settings like job interviews, client meetings, and presentations. It can help you appear more senior and authoritative, even when you're not the highest-ranking person in the room. The pause signals that your words have value and should be heard. Use this technique strategically. Don't pause before every single response, as this will seem artificial. Save it for important questions or moments when you want to emphasize your authority and thoughtfulness. Act like you already belong. Acting like you already belong is a confidence technique that involves carrying yourself with the assumption that you have every right to be in any space or situation. This mindset shift changes your body language, tone of voice, and overall energy in ways that make others naturally accept your presence and authority. The power of this approach lies in how others perceive and respond to confidence. When you walk into a room acting like you belong there, people subconsciously assume you do belong. Confidence is contagious and convincing. Most people won't question someone who genuinely appears to be in the right place. This technique works because it eliminates the subtle signs of insecurity that might otherwise undermine your position. When you feel like an outsider, you unconsciously display hesitation, seek permission, or defer to others unnecessarily. But when you act like you belong, you move with purpose, speak with authority, and take up appropriate space. The key is authenticity within confidence. You're not pretending to be someone else or lying about your qualifications. Instead, you're choosing to focus on your legitimate reasons for being there rather than your doubts or fears. You have skills, experiences, and perspectives that add value, and you're acting from that truth. Body language is crucial for this technique. Stand tall, make eye contact, use firm handshakes, and move with purpose. Speak clearly and avoid uptalk or excessive apologizing. These physical behaviors reinforce your mental state and signal to others that you're confident in your place. This approach is particularly valuable in networking events, job interviews, and new social or professional situations. It helps you overcome imposter syndrome and allows others to see your true capabilities rather than your self-doubt. Remember that belonging isn't about arrogance or dismissing others. It's about owning your right to be present and contribute. You can be humble and collaborative while still projecting the confidence that you deserve to be there. Make eye contact just 1 second longer. Making eye contact just 1 second longer than feels natural creates a powerful connection that communicates confidence, sincerity, and engagement. This subtle extension of normal eye contact duration can dramatically increase your presence and influence in any interaction without seeming aggressive or uncomfortable. The technique works because most people break eye contact too quickly due to social conditioning or nervousness. By holding eye contact slightly longer, you differentiate yourself as someone who is comfortable, confident, and genuinely interested in the other person. This extra second communicates that you're present and engaged rather than distracted or eager to look away. Extended eye contact triggers several psychological responses. It creates a sense of intimacy and trust because sustained eye contact is typically reserved for people we feel close to or comfortable with. It also demonstrates respect and attention, showing that you value the person and the conversation enough to maintain focus. The key is finding the right balance. Too little eye contact can make you seem shifty, uninterested, or lacking confidence. Too much can feel aggressive or intimidating. The goal is to extend your natural eye contact by just 1 additional second beyond your comfort zone. This creates impact without crossing into uncomfortable territory. This technique is particularly effective during important moments in conversation. Use it when making key points, asking important questions, or listening to crucial information. The extended eye contact emphasizes these moments and makes them more memorable for both parties. Practice this gradually to build your comfort level. Start with people you know well before using it in high-stakes situations. Pay attention to how others respond. You should notice increased engagement, trust, and connection in your interactions. The technique works across various contexts, from job interviews and sales meetings to personal conversations and public speaking. It's especially powerful when combined with other confidence techniques, creating a compound effect that significantly enhances your presence and influence. Keep hands visible at all times. Keeping your hands visible at all times is a fundamental trust-building technique rooted in basic human psychology and evolutionary behavior. When your hands are visible, people subconsciously feel safer and more comfortable around you because they can see that you're not concealing anything threatening or deceptive. This technique works because hidden hands trigger ancient survival instincts. Throughout human history, concealed hands could mean hidden weapons or ill intentions. Even in modern, safe environments, our brains still process visible hands as a signal of openness and honesty. When people can see your hands, they're more likely to trust you and feel at ease in your presence. Visible hands also enhance your ability to communicate effectively. Hand gestures are a crucial part of human communication, helping to emphasize points, convey emotions, and make abstract concepts more concrete. When you keep your hands visible and use them purposefully, you become a more engaging and persuasive communicator. The technique extends beyond just keeping hands out of pockets or behind your back. It involves using your hands actively and appropriately during conversation. This might mean gesturing while you speak, using open palm positions, or simply resting your hands visibly on a table or your lap during meetings. Professional settings particularly benefit from this approach. In job interviews, business meetings, and presentations, visible hands project competence and trustworthiness. They signal that you're open, honest, and have nothing to hide. This can be especially important when discussing sensitive topics or trying to persuade others. Be mindful of what you do with your visible hands. Fidgeting, clenching fists, or pointing can create negative impressions. Instead, use calm, controlled movements and open gestures. Practice natural hand positions that feel comfortable while still remaining visible and purposeful. Cultural considerations matter with this technique. Some cultures have different norms around hand visibility and gesturing. Adapt your approach based on your environment while maintaining the core principle of openness and trustworthiness. Use open gestures to invite openness. Using open gestures to invite openness is a powerful communication technique that creates psychological safety and encourages honest dialogue. Open gestures include uncrossed arms, visible palms, relaxed shoulders, and welcoming body positioning that signals you're receptive and non-threatening. This technique works because humans mirror each other's body language subconsciously. When you display open, welcoming gestures, others naturally begin to match your energy and become more open themselves. It's like creating a positive feedback loop where openness breeds more openness. Open gestures communicate several important messages simultaneously. They show that you're confident, trustworthy, and genuinely interested in what the other person has to say. Your body language tells them that you're not defensive, hiding anything, or preparing to attack their ideas. This makes people feel safe to share their thoughts and feelings more freely. The key gestures include keeping your arms uncrossed and at your sides or resting naturally. Show your palms occasionally when speaking, as this ancient gesture of peace still carries powerful psychological weight. Maintain relaxed shoulders rather than hunching them defensively. Keep your chest open rather than turning away or creating barriers with objects. Facial expressions matter just as much as body positioning. Maintain a relaxed, pleasant expression. Let your face show genuine interest and engagement. Avoid frowning, squinting, or other expressions that might seem judgmental or critical. Your face should invite conversation, not shut it down. This technique is particularly valuable in difficult conversations, negotiations, and situations where you need people to be honest with you. When someone feels judged or threatened, they become defensive and less willing to share important information. Open gestures create the opposite effect. Practice this in low-stakes situations first. Notice how people respond differently when you consciously use open body language versus when you're closed off. You'll likely find that conversations flow more smoothly and people are more willing to engage deeply with you. Remember that authenticity matters. Your gestures should match your genuine intention to be open and receptive. If you're feeling defensive or closed off internally, work on shifting your mindset first, then let your body language follow naturally. Turn the chair slightly toward them. Turning the chair slightly toward them is a subtle but powerful way to show interest, respect, and engagement in any conversation. This small physical adjustment communicates that you're giving the other person your full attention and that they're worth your time and focus. The angle of your body sends clear nonverbal messages about your level of interest and engagement. When you turn towards someone, you're literally orienting your entire being in their direction. This physical positioning signals that you're present, attentive, and invested in the interaction. It shows that you're not looking for an escape route or distracted by other things. This technique works because it makes the other person feel valued and heard. In our busy, distracted world, giving someone your full physical attention has become increasingly rare and precious. When you turn toward them, you're offering something that many people rarely receive: undivided focus and genuine presence. The psychological impact is immediate and profound. People can sense when someone is truly engaged versus when they're going through the motions. The simple act of angling your body toward them creates a sense of intimacy and connection that wouldn't exist if you remained facing forward or away. This adjustment is particularly powerful in professional settings. During meetings, interviews, or one-on-one conversations, turning slightly toward the other person demonstrates professionalism and courtesy. It shows that you take them seriously and value what they have to contribute. The technique also works well in social situations. At parties, networking events, or casual gatherings, turning towards someone when they're speaking makes them feel important and interesting. This often leads to deeper, more meaningful conversations and stronger relationship building. Be mindful of personal space and cultural norms when using this technique. The goal is to show interest without making anyone uncomfortable. A slight turn is usually sufficient. You don't need to face them completely unless the situation calls for it. Practice this consciously until it becomes a natural habit. Notice how people respond when you give them this simple gift of your full physical attention. Let them say no to feel in control. Letting them say no to feel in control is a counterintuitive persuasion technique that actually increases your chances of getting a yes by giving the other person genuine choice and autonomy. When people feel they have the power to refuse, they're more likely to consider your request fairly and often choose to help. This technique works because it eliminates psychological pressure and resistance. When someone feels cornered or manipulated into saying yes, they naturally want to push back and assert their independence by saying no. But when you explicitly give them permission to refuse, this resistance disappears, and they can evaluate your request on its actual merits. The approach demonstrates respect for the other person's autonomy and decision-making ability. You're acknowledging that they're capable of making their own choices and that their comfort and preferences matter to you. This respect creates goodwill and makes them more inclined to help if they reasonably can. People appreciate honesty and straightforwardness in requests. When you say something like, "Feel free to say no if this doesn't work for you," or, "I completely understand if you can't help with this," you're being genuinely considerate of their circumstances. This authenticity builds trust and rapport. The technique also reduces guilt and obligation, which can create resentment even when someone says yes. When people feel forced to help, they may comply but feel negatively about the interaction. But when they choose to help freely, they feel good about their decision and positive about you. This approach is particularly effective with people who are naturally helpful or people pleasers. These individuals often say yes when they want to say no, then feel resentful later. By giving them explicit permission to refuse, you allow them to make genuine choices that they won't regret. Use this technique when making requests that require someone's time, energy, or resources. Frame your ask clearly, then genuinely give them space to decline. You'll often find that people appreciate this approach and are more willing to help when they feel their choice is truly respected. You probably already know this. You probably already know this is a psychological technique that reduces resistance to new information by acknowledging the other person's intelligence and existing knowledge. This phrase works as a verbal cushion that makes people more receptive to what you're about to share, even if the information is completely new to them. This approach works because it flatters the listener's intelligence without being obvious about it. You're implying that they're knowledgeable and well-informed, which makes them feel good about themselves. When people feel respected and valued, they're more open to listening and less likely to become defensive or argumentative. The phrase also reduces the potential embarrassment of not knowing something. If you simply state a fact that someone doesn't know, they might feel ignorant or left out. But when you preface it with, "You probably already know this," you give them a face-saving way to receive new information without feeling diminished. This technique eliminates the know-it-all perception that can make people resistant to your message. Instead of positioning yourself as the expert teaching the ignorant, you're positioning yourself as someone sharing information with an equal. This collaborative approach makes your message more palatable and acceptable. The phrase works particularly well when you actually do have valuable information to share. It allows you to educate without seeming condescending or superior. People can learn from you while maintaining their dignity and sense of competence. Use this technique in professional settings when sharing insights, giving feedback, or introducing new concepts. It's especially effective with senior colleagues, clients, or anyone who might feel threatened by being taught something new. The phrase helps them save face while still receiving valuable information. Be genuine when using this approach. Don't use it to dress up common knowledge or obvious information, as this will seem patronizing. Save it for times when you have genuinely useful insights that the other person might not have considered, but frame it in a way that respects their intelligence and experience. The key is authenticity and respect. You're not trying to manipulate anyone, you're simply being considerate of their feelings while sharing valuable information. Ask them to teach you something. Asking them to teach you something is one of the most powerful relationship-building techniques available because it appeals to people's fundamental desire to feel valued, respected, and useful. When you ask someone to share their knowledge or skills, you're giving them a gift, the opportunity to feel important and appreciated. This technique works because teaching makes people feel good about themselves. Most people have areas where they have knowledge, experience, or skills that others could benefit from. When you acknowledge this and ask them to share it, you're recognizing their competence and value. This creates positive feelings toward you and strengthens your relationship. The approach also demonstrates humility and wisdom on your part. You're showing that you're confident enough to admit when you don't know something and smart enough to learn from others. This vulnerability actually makes you more likable and trustworthy, not less competent. People remember those who made them feel knowledgeable and helpful. When someone teaches you something, they invest part of themselves in your success and learning. This creates a psychological bond and makes them more likely to support you in the future. Teachers naturally care about their students' progress and well-being. The technique is particularly effective with people who might otherwise feel threatened by you or competitive with you. When you position yourself as a student rather than a rival, you diffuse potential tension and create collaboration instead of competition. Even high-achieving, successful people enjoy being asked for their insights and advice. Choose your requests thoughtfully. Ask about areas where the person genuinely has expertise or experience that you could benefit from. This might be professional skills, life experiences, hobbies, or any area where they have knowledge to share. Make sure your request is sincere, not just flattery. Follow through by actually listening, asking good questions, and implementing what you learn. This shows respect for their time and knowledge. People can tell when someone is genuinely interested versus just going through the motions of asking for advice. When nervous, help someone else. When nervous, help someone else is a psychological redirect technique that transforms your anxious energy into positive action while simultaneously reducing your own stress levels. Instead of focusing inward on your nervousness, you shift your attention outward to someone who could benefit from your assistance or support. This technique works because helping others activates the brain's reward centers and releases feel-good chemicals like oxytocin and endorphins. These natural mood elevators counteract the stress hormones that create nervousness and anxiety. You literally feel better by focusing on someone else's needs instead of your own worries. The approach also provides perspective on your own situation. When you see that others have challenges and struggles too, your own problems often seem more manageable. This shift in perspective can reduce the intensity of your nervousness and help you see your situation more clearly and rationally. Helping others gives you a sense of purpose and control when you might otherwise feel helpless or overwhelmed. Instead of being passive in the face of your anxiety, you become active in making someone else's day better. This action-oriented approach builds confidence and reduces the powerless feeling that often accompanies nervousness. The technique creates positive social connections at moments when you might otherwise isolate yourself. When you're nervous, there's often a tendency to withdraw or avoid social interaction. But reaching out to help someone else forces you to connect, which usually improves your mood and reduces anxiety. Look for small, manageable ways to help when you're feeling nervous. This might mean offering encouragement to a colleague, helping someone with a task, listening to a friend's concerns, or simply being kind to someone who seems to be having a difficult day. The act doesn't need to be grand to be effective. The beauty of this technique is that it creates a positive cycle. You feel better because you helped someone, which makes you more confident and less nervous. The person you helped feels good and may reciprocate with kindness, further boosting your mood. Everyone benefits from your decision to focus outward instead of inward. Use future pacing. Imagine if. Using future pacing with imagine if is a powerful persuasion and motivation technique that helps people visualize positive outcomes and possibilities. This approach engages the imagination and creates emotional connection to potential futures, making ideas more compelling and actionable than simple logical arguments alone. Future pacing works because the human brain processes imagined experiences similarly to real ones. When you ask someone to imagine a positive scenario, their brain activates many of the same neural pathways that would fire if they were actually experiencing that situation. This creates genuine excitement and motivation toward making that vision reality. The phrase, imagine if, is particularly effective because it's inviting rather than demanding. You're not telling someone what will happen, you're asking them to explore possibilities with you. This collaborative approach reduces resistance and makes people more open to considering new ideas or changes. This technique helps people move beyond current limitations and constraints. When we're stuck in present circumstances, it can be difficult to envision different possibilities. Future pacing breaks through this mental barrier by actively engaging the imagination and showing what could be possible under different conditions. The approach is especially powerful when combined with specific, vivid details. Instead of vague statements like, "things could be better," paint clear pictures of improved outcomes. Help people see, feel, and experience the benefits of change or action in their mind's eye. Use this technique when you want to motivate action, inspire change, or help someone see new possibilities. It works well in coaching, sales, leadership, and personal conversations where you want to help someone move forward. The key is making the imagined future feel real and attainable. Be authentic when using future pacing. Don't promise unrealistic outcomes or create false expectations. Focus on genuine possibilities that could realistically result from the actions or changes you're discussing. The goal is inspiration and motivation, not manipulation or false hope. Practice using specific sensory details when future pacing. Help people imagine not just what they'll see, but what they'll hear, feel, and experience in their improved future state. Be the first to apologize in conflict. Being the first to apologize in conflict is a leadership technique that demonstrates strength, maturity, and commitment to resolution rather than winning. This approach often diffuses tension, opens the door to productive dialogue, and can quickly transform adversarial situations into collaborative problem-solving opportunities. This technique works because it breaks the cycle of defensiveness and blame that keeps conflicts escalating. When both parties are focused on being right and proving the other wrong, the conflict becomes about ego rather than resolution. By apologizing first, you shift the dynamic from competition to cooperation. The apology doesn't mean you're accepting full responsibility or admitting you were completely wrong. You can apologize for your role in the misunderstanding, for any hurt feelings caused, or for the situation having reached this point. The key is taking ownership of your part without requiring the other person to admit fault first. This approach demonstrates emotional intelligence and maturity. It shows that you value the relationship and the resolution more than your pride or need to be right. This often inspires the other person to respond with similar maturity and grace, creating space for mutual understanding. Being first to apologize gives you control over the direction of the conversation. Instead of remaining stuck in blame and defensiveness, you can guide the discussion towards solutions and understanding. This leadership often results in better outcomes for everyone involved. The technique is particularly powerful with people who care about you or respect you. When someone sees that you're willing to be vulnerable and take responsibility, it often touches their better nature and makes them want to reciprocate with understanding and forgiveness. Choose your words carefully when apologizing. Be specific about what you're apologizing for, and make sure your apology is sincere. Avoid apologies that shift blame or minimize the other person's feelings. Focus on genuine regret and commitment to moving forward positively. Remember that apologizing first doesn't make you weak, it makes you wise and strong enough to prioritize resolution over ego. Ask for opinions, not answers. Asking for opinions instead of answers is a powerful engagement technique that makes people feel valued, respected, and intellectually involved in conversations. When you ask for someone's opinion, you're acknowledging their judgment, experience, and perspective as valuable contributions rather than simply seeking factual information. This technique works because opinions invite personal investment and creativity. When someone gives you an answer, they're providing information they already know. But when they share an opinion, they're offering part of their thinking process, their values, and their unique perspective. This deeper level of engagement creates stronger connection and more meaningful dialogue. People feel more important and appreciated when asked for their opinions. You're essentially saying that their thoughts and perspectives matter to you and could influence your thinking. This recognition of their intellectual value builds rapport and makes them more invested in the conversation and relationship. The approach also generates more detailed, thoughtful responses. Factual questions often receive brief, definitive answers. But opinion questions encourage people to elaborate, explain their reasoning, and share the experiences or beliefs that shape their views. This leads to richer, more interesting conversations. Opinion-based questions reduce pressure and create psychological safety. There are no wrong opinions in the same way there might be wrong answers. This makes people more comfortable sharing their thoughts without fear of being corrected or judged. They can explore ideas freely and think out loud. Use this technique when you want to build relationships, encourage participation, or generate creative thinking. Instead of asking, "What's the best solution?" try, "What's your take on this situation?" Instead of, "What should we do?" ask, "What do you think would work best here?" The key is genuine curiosity about their perspective. Don't ask for opinions if you've already made up your mind and don't intend to consider their input. People can sense when you're going through the motions versus when you truly value their thoughts. Follow up on the opinions you receive with additional questions that show you're processing and considering their perspective. This demonstrates that you truly value their input and aren't just being polite. Mention a mutual interest, not a person. Mentioning a mutual interest instead of a mutual person is a sophisticated networking and relationship-building technique that creates immediate common ground without the potential complications that come with discussing people. This approach builds connection through shared passions, experiences, or activities rather than through gossip or personal relationships. This technique works because shared interests create authentic bonds between people. When you discover that someone else enjoys the same hobby, follows the same sport, or shares similar professional interests, it immediately establishes commonality and gives you natural conversation topics that both people genuinely care about. The approach avoids the pitfalls that can come with mentioning mutual people. When you bring up someone both parties know, the conversation can quickly turn into gossip, complaints, or uncomfortable territory depending on how each person feels about that individual. Shared interests, however, are typically positive conversation territory. Mutual interests also provide ongoing conversation material and potential future connection points. If you both enjoy hiking, photography, or a particular type of music, you have built-in reasons to stay in touch and continue building the relationship. This creates more sustainable networking than connections based solely on knowing the same people. The technique demonstrates that you've paid attention to the person and remember details about their interests and preferences. This shows respect and genuine interest in them as an individual rather than just as a professional contact or social connection. Look for opportunities to discover and reference shared interests naturally. This might come from social media posts, previous conversations, professional backgrounds, or casual observations. The key is to bring these up authentically when they're relevant to the current conversation. Use shared interests as bridges to deeper conversations. A mutual love of cooking can lead to discussions about creativity, cultural experiences, or work-life balance. Professional interests can open doors to collaboration and mentorship opportunities. The interest is just the starting point for building genuine connection. Be sincere about your own interests. Don't claim to share interests you don't actually have just to build rapport. Authentic connections based on genuine commonalities are much more valuable than surface-level connections built on false pretenses. Laugh slightly before your joke. Laughing slightly before your joke is a subtle comedy technique that primes your audience for humor and increases the likelihood that they'll find your joke funny. This pre-laugh serves as a social signal that something amusing is coming and gives people permission to relax and prepare for humor. This technique works because laughter is contagious and social. When people see you beginning to smile or chuckle, their brains start preparing for humor. They become more receptive to finding things funny because they're already in a positive, expectant mood. Your slight laugh essentially tells them that it's okay and appropriate to laugh at what's coming. The pre-laugh also demonstrates your own confidence in your humor. When you show that you find your own joke amusing, it suggests that others probably will too. This confidence is reassuring to your audience and makes them more likely to join in the fun rather than worry about whether it's appropriate to laugh. This approach helps establish the right tone and timing for humor. Comedy is highly dependent on timing and context. Your preliminary laugh helps create the comedic moment and signals that now is the time for lightness and fun. It serves as a verbal and emotional setup for the punchline. The technique is particularly useful in professional or formal settings where people might be uncertain about whether humor is appropriate. Your slight laugh gives them social permission to enjoy the moment and join in the levity without worrying about professional decorum. Be careful not to overdo this technique. The pre-laugh should be subtle and natural, not forced or exaggerated. It should feel like genuine amusement beginning to bubble up, not like you're trying too hard to signal that something funny is coming. The timing matters significantly. The laugh should come just before you deliver the humorous line, not too early or too late. Practice this timing so it feels natural and spontaneous rather than calculated or artificial. Remember that this technique works best when your humor is actually good and appropriate for the situation. No amount of pre-laughing can save a bad joke or inappropriate humor. Let silence sit just 1 second too long. Letting silence sit just 1 second too long is a powerful communication technique that creates emphasis, builds anticipation, and gives weight to important moments in conversation. This strategic use of silence can make your words more impactful and encourage others to fill the space with valuable information. This technique works because silence creates psychological tension that people naturally want to resolve. When a pause extends slightly beyond what feels comfortable, it draws attention to itself and makes whatever comes next feel more significant. The silence essentially puts a spotlight on the words that follow. Extended silence also encourages others to elaborate or reveal more information. Many people are uncomfortable with quiet moments and will fill the silence with additional thoughts, clarifications, or details they might not have shared otherwise. This can be particularly valuable in negotiations, interviews, or when you're trying to understand someone's true thoughts. The approach demonstrates confidence and control. Someone who is comfortable with silence appears self-assured and thoughtful rather than rushed or desperate to fill every moment with words. This composure naturally commands respect and attention from others. Strategic silence gives you time to formulate better responses and choose your words more carefully. Instead of rushing to fill the quiet with the first thing that comes to mind, you can consider your options and respond more thoughtfully and effectively. The key is making the silence feel intentional rather than awkward. The pause should seem like you're considering something important or allowing space for the other person to process what's been said. Your body language and expression should remain calm and engaged during the quiet moment. Use this technique sparingly and in appropriate situations. Not every pause needs to be extended, and overusing this approach can make conversations feel artificially dramatic or manipulative. Save it for moments when you want to emphasize important points or encourage deeper sharing. Practice this in low-stakes conversations first to build your comfort with silence. Many people find quiet moments uncomfortable initially, but you can develop greater ease with strategic pauses through gradual practice. Use their words in your reply. Using their words in your reply is a powerful rapport-building technique that shows you're truly listening and helps the other person feel heard and understood. When you incorporate someone's specific language, phrases, or terminology into your response, it creates connection and demonstrates that you value their communication style. This technique works because people feel validated when they hear their own words reflected back to them. It's psychological proof that you were paying attention and that their message was received and understood. This validation builds trust and makes them more likely to continue sharing openly with you. The approach also helps you speak in a way that resonates with the other person. Everyone has their own communication style, preferred terminology, and ways of expressing ideas. When you mirror their language patterns, you're essentially speaking their dialect, which makes your message more accessible and persuasive to them. Using their words demonstrates respect for their perspective and way of thinking. Instead of immediately translating their ideas into your own language, you honor their expression and show that you find their way of communicating valuable and worth preserving. This technique can help clarify understanding and prevent miscommunication. When you reflect back their specific words, it gives them the opportunity to confirm that you understood correctly or to clarify if you missed something important. This creates more accurate communication overall. Be selective about which words and phrases you mirror. Focus on key terms, important concepts, or emotionally significant language rather than mindlessly parroting everything they said. The goal is thoughtful reflection, not mechanical repetition. The mirroring should feel natural and integrated into your response, not forced or obvious. Weave their language into your reply in a way that flows smoothly and adds value to the conversation rather than calling attention to the technique itself. This approach is particularly effective in counseling, coaching, sales, and any situation where building rapport and understanding is crucial. It helps create the feeling that you and the other person are on the same wavelength and working toward mutual understanding. Never break eye contact while listening. Never breaking eye contact while listening is a powerful demonstration of respect, attention, and engagement that makes speakers feel truly heard and valued. This technique shows that you consider what they're saying important enough to deserve your complete visual attention. This approach works because sustained eye contact while listening sends multiple positive messages simultaneously. It communicates that you're fully present, genuinely interested, and not distracted by other things. In our age of constant digital distractions, this level of focused attention has become increasingly rare and precious. The technique creates a sense of intimacy and connection that builds stronger relationships. When someone feels truly seen and heard, it creates positive feelings toward you and increases their trust and willingness to share more openly. This can deepen both personal and professional relationships significantly. Maintaining eye contact while listening also helps you pick up on nonverbal cues and emotions that you might miss if you were looking away. You can see subtle changes in expression, emotion, or energy that give you additional information about how the person is feeling and what they really mean. This level of attention often encourages people to share more deeply and honestly than they might otherwise. When someone sees that you're truly focused on them, they often feel safe to be more vulnerable and open about their thoughts, feelings, and experiences. The key is making your eye contact feel natural and comfortable rather than intense or staring. Your expression should be warm, interested, and encouraging. The goal is to make the speaker feel supported and heard, not scrutinized or uncomfortable. Be mindful of cultural differences around eye contact, as norms vary across different backgrounds. Adapt your approach while maintaining the core principle of showing respect and attention through your visual engagement. This technique is particularly powerful in important conversations, conflicts, or emotional discussions where the other person needs to feel heard and understood. It can transform the quality of communication and help resolve issues more effectively. Remember to blink naturally and occasionally show appropriate facial expressions that respond to what you're hearing. The goal is engaged attention, not robotic staring. Touch the table to anchor attention. Touching the table to anchor attention is a subtle physical technique that draws focus to your words and creates emphasis during important moments in conversation. This gentle, purposeful contact with the surface serves as a nonverbal signal that what you're about to say deserves special attention. This technique works because physical movement naturally draws the human eye and attention. When you deliberately touch or tap the table, people's eyes are drawn to the movement, which then brings their attention back to you and whatever you're saying. It's a way of regaining focus without being obvious or disruptive. The table touch serves as a physical anchor that helps people remember important points. The combination of visual movement, physical action, and your words creates a multisensory experience that's more memorable than words alone. People often recall the moment when someone emphasized a point by touching the table. This approach adds weight and gravity to your statements. The physical action suggests that what you're saying is significant enough to warrant additional emphasis. It's particularly effective when making key points, sharing important information, or trying to ensure that crucial details aren't overlooked. The technique can help you regain control of conversations that are becoming unfocused or distracted. When attention starts to wander, a gentle table touch can bring everyone's focus back to the discussion and your message without being aggressive or demanding. The key is subtlety and timing. The touch should be gentle and purposeful, not aggressive or attention-seeking. It works best when coordinated with important verbal content, creating a natural emphasis rather than seeming random or nervous. Use this technique sparingly to maintain its effectiveness. If you touch the table constantly, it loses its impact and may become distracting rather than helpful. Save it for moments when you really need to emphasize important points or regain attention. The approach works well in meetings, presentations, negotiations, and any situation where you need to ensure your key points are heard and remembered. It's particularly useful when competing with distractions or when delivering crucial information. Ask, "What made you say that?" Asking, "What made you say that?" is a powerful conversation technique that encourages deeper sharing and helps you understand the reasoning, experiences, or emotions behind someone's statements. This question shows genuine curiosity about their thought process and often reveals valuable insights that wouldn't emerge otherwise. This technique works because it invites people to examine and explain their own thinking. Instead of just accepting their statement at surface value, you're asking them to dig deeper into the why behind their words. This often leads to more meaningful, substantive conversations and better mutual understanding. The question demonstrates that you're truly listening and thinking about what they've shared rather than just waiting for your turn to speak. It shows that you find their perspective interesting enough to want to understand it more completely. This level of engagement builds rapport and trust. This approach often reveals important context, experiences, or emotions that inform someone's perspective. The initial statement might be just the tip of the iceberg, with rich background information that explains their viewpoint more fully. Understanding these deeper layers helps you respond more appropriately and effectively. The question can also help people clarify their own thoughts and feelings. Sometimes we say things without fully examining why we believe or feel them. When asked to explain our reasoning, we often gain new insights into our own perspectives and motivations. Use this question when someone makes statements that seem important, surprising, or emotionally charged. It's particularly valuable when you sense there's more to the story or when you want to understand someone's perspective more completely before responding. The key is asking with genuine curiosity rather than challenge or skepticism. Your tone should convey interest in understanding, not questioning their judgment or demanding justification. The goal is exploration and understanding, not interrogation or confrontation. This technique is especially effective in coaching, counseling, conflict resolution, and any situation where deep understanding is important. It helps move conversations beyond surface-level exchanges to more meaningful dialogue that can lead to better outcomes and stronger relationships.